You ready?
Good morning, everyone. At this time, I'll call the Crow Wing County Board of Commissioners regular meeting for August 24th, 2021 to order. If you'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, it's open forum. If there's anyone out there who wishes to speak on any subject other than what's on our published agenda, this is your opportunity to speak. If you give me your name, Mayor Nevin, and where you're
David
from.
Nevin, Mayor of Cross Lake. Thank you for letting me come up here. I am here with the support of the full City Council, the Public Safety Committee, the police, fire, Chamber of Commerce, and the citizens of Cross Lake. Cross Lake, like all small towns, is getting a lot of pedestrian and vehicle traffic. We've got Army Corps campground right in the heart of downtown. And pedestrians, we got a real concern for. So what the city would like to do, and we have purchased 2 sets of solar-powered push-button lights to illuminate these 2 crosswalks. And what is required of us now is to replace the ADA ramps. We had a price to do it, $4,000 came in, the specs were too much, the concrete guy left. He's not gonna do it. So we have to go revisit that, get another price. And what I would like to do, we're not altering anything. The only thing we wanna do is drill 2 6-inch holes, put these signs up. They're solar powered. We'll figure out the ADA ramps, what we have to do. They are broke up, they are wore, but they are reasonably compliant. I took a level out there, I measured it, the slope is reasonably, and there's probably 6 ramps in the area. There's only 2 that they're requiring us to replace. So what I'm asking for you is just in the spirit of protecting the citizens and the people. We see every day cars passing on their shoulders. We know the drill, we see it all over. We just want to give them a push button flashing light to allow them to do it, and we'll figure out the ramps. Whether we kick it 2-3 years down the road till they redo the county road, or we do it next year, we'd like to do it, but we'd like to immediately get these signs in. I do have the Chief of Police from Cross Lake here and the Public Safety Committee Chair. I don't know if you guys want to add anything to that. That's all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mayor. If you'll give us your name and where you live.
Morning, I'm Bob Heelis, 14369 Swan Drive in Cross Lake, and I'm chairman of the Public Safety Committee in Cross Lake. As Mayor Nevin said, it's really been a unanimous recommendation from our committee as well as the City Council to install these lights. It started out by noticing that there were no crosswalk signs at the school, believe it or not. There was a crosswalk, but none of the big neon signs. So the County Highway Department agreed to put those signs in, and we just took it to the next level and said, let's add the lights, the flashing lights, to make it safer. If we can't put the lights in, then you're stuck with the same ramps we have now. So let's do what makes sense, put the lights in. At a later date, we'll address these ramps. Thank you.
Thank you. Chief?
Good morning. Cross Lake Police Chief Eric Lee, 13888 Daggett Bay Road, Cross Lake. I just want to reiterate what the mayor and Chairperson Heelis said, but I understand what County Engineer Bray is saying. I really don't want to go against him, but 99 times out of 100, you're going to agree with what he has to say. This is probably one of those times that we have to err on the side of public safety and get these signs up. Just the other day, I had 2 individuals that were going to walk across the crosswalk, and I was stopped right there. Car came flying through, almost hit them. It's an issue, and we've got to try to resolve it. I've seen these signs work. I was just in Washburn, Wisconsin this last weekend, and watch the signs work perfectly. If we're not altering other than upgrading signs on the sidewalks, you know, the ADA things that we're not even planning on doing until 2026, I believe, I think we can, you know, do a Band-Aid fix for public safety right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who wishes to speak? Anyone else?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, this is actually the very first time I've heard about this issue. I'm sure you've heard about it, but I have not heard about it. Our county engineer is standing there. I guess I've heard that side. Would it be appropriate for me to hear from the county engineer?
It is. I know we're not making a decision today.
Right.
So, yes, if Tim, if
Would
you're
that be
willing
okay?
to.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I'm Tim Bray, the county engineer. And our office has been working with the city of Cross Lake actually for a couple of years to talk about pedestrians in Cross Lake. It really started, from my perspective, started when the National Loon Center was coming in. There was a number of us that were very concerned about the increase in pedestrians there. So we've been working for the last 2 years, and the city council and the county board have endorsed grant applications for federal money, about $500,000. We were unsuccessful 2 years in a row. And these flashers that the mayor talked about and chief talked about have been in the plan. So we've been talking about it for a while. And also in that plan included the required ADA improvements, the Americans with Disabilities Act. It was a law passed in 1990 that basically, in a nutshell, requires public entities to make sure that the facilities are accessible. And one of the requirements is that each public entity, including the county, must have a plan to upgrade deficient facilities so people with disabilities can use the systems. The county in 2018 first passed the ADA transition plan, which basically sets a timeline for when these should be upgraded. The policy was adopted by the board, and my requirement to the city of Cross Lake is in alignment with that policy. To wait 2 to 3 years is exactly, to kick the can down the road is exactly what the federal government doesn't want. They want to set a specific timeline so that these facilities can be upgraded. There is no plan in the near horizon to upgrade the portion of the road where we would normally do it with a county project. This is the first opportunity to get those facilities upgraded in the intent of state and federal law and your ADA transition plan. That's why I'm holding the line with this, to make sure they get done. They are in agreement with the ramps. Their bidder, they currently don't have a bidder. They had their city engineer put together a plan that I required to have. The city, wanted to simply put in the flashers, but I stopped them and said, hey, we have to do this. This is our ADA plan. It is the intent of the federal and state law. We have to do this. So the city engineer took a step backwards and actually went out and surveyed the ramps with engineering, with survey equipment, came up with a concrete plan to redo the concrete, particularly on the west side with the Corps of Engineers. And so they have a plan, and by, I guess, allowing the city engineer to do the plans, we're in agreement that they were needed. Now they've run into a bidding issue and say they can't get a bidder, and that's the reason why they can't go in. And I think what I'd like to see is to try harder to find a bidder. Expand your bidding. You agreed to put the ramps in by allowing your city engineer to design them. Let's not wait, and let's follow the intent of the law and the county ADA policy.
So before you leave, Mr. Houle, a question for you, because I know in the past, I've served in the legislature, and you said that county government is really a child of state government. We have to follow Minnesota state statutes that are passed. And I believe we do have oversight from the Department of Transportation also, don't we, on this issue specifically?
We
Either
do.
Tim
This-
Bray or Tim Hool?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Tim Bray, can you expand on that?
Yes,
just a little bit?
so MnDOT has oversight of the county state aid system. So these are the roads with 1-digit and 2-digit designations in Crow Wing County. So CSAH 66 is the area in question at the intersection of CSAH 3. So there is state representation that has to approve plans that we do on these roads, and also make sure that they're up to standard. This is one of the standards that they commonly check when we are doing plans with them. And so this is a standalone project by the city of Cross Lake, but it is on this system that the MnDOT has oversight on. If I was doing this project, there wouldn't even be a discussion. We would not be able to do something like this without upgrading the ADA ramps, the Americans with Disabilities Act. And so I'm following suit with the intent and the standard they hold me to the city of Cross Lake. If we don't do them now, it'll be 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the road that those particular ramps will get done. And that is not following the intent of the rules. And I want to stand by the rules. The people with disabilities deserve these upgrades, and this is the first time the opportunity presents itself, and we should take it.
Okay.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Mayor, you had a couple more words?
Mayor again, Mayor Cross Lake, Dave Nevin. This winter, we're going to approve about a mile-long sewer expansion on the north end of town. There are several ramps that are going to have to be done in that project. So that would mean next spring, summer, we're going to have a concrete guy doing ramps. The city would assure the county that we would address these ramp issues at that time. The problem with the delay to me is we're going to have 1,000 more people going across those pedestrian walks, and I don't want to get a call in the middle of the night that some kid got killed on them. I want to try to do everything I can do to prevent that. I'm not trying to dodge the bullet or not do them or not come in compliance. There are ramps there now, arguably whether they meet the standards, they've been surveyed, they say they don't, but they're close. They're marginal. And all it would be is about a 6 to 9 month delay, and then we do them. They're temporary ramps. We could pull the poles out of the ground, give away, do the work, put them back in. They're not hardwired, they're solar paneled, they're removable. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think for understanding, you have to appreciate the fact that this board has to follow the law. And what we're hearing from our engineer is that the law says that there's a process for this. And I think that I can safely say that this board will not go against the law, the federal or state laws that we are bound by. So with that having been said, I think our position has been stated. So with that, I'll move on. Is there anyone else who would like to speak during open forum on any other subject not on our agenda? Seeing none,
Mr. Chair, could I say one more thing?
Commissioner Coring?
I just want to say, Mr. Mayor, I appreciate the way you conducted yourself this morning. I know that some of our land services staff came up there, and I heard about how you treated them. And so I was ready for you to give you both barrels this morning, but you were very respectful. I appreciate that. This is a working relationship between cities, counties, townships, and when you treat our staff with disrespect, in my mind, that doesn't play very well with me. So I just appreciate you. It was a very respectful conversation. We can get things done very respectfully, but don't ambush our staff anymore, if you wouldn't, please. Yeah.
And with that, I'm going to,
You've got me quite confused by that statement.
Well, this was on that Airbnb when our staff came up there. The way I understood the story was you let everybody else speak, and then you told our staff, "I hope you feel uncomfortable." Well, I don't think you should be putting our staff in an uncomfortable position.
I felt uncomfortable. I apologize for that. I didn't mean it that way. We're just trying to, it's another problem that we're trying to take care of.
Right.
And we certainly would like to work with the county.
And we want to work with you.
Okay,
At least I do.
okay, so thank you.
Thank you. With that, we'll move on to number 3, which is review and approve the minutes from August 10th, 2021.
Motion to approve.
And one second, Commissioner Corning, I'm going to put 3-1 and 3-2 together.
okay.
And the other one is to amend the minutes from July 13th, 2021 and July 27th, 2021. With that, I would look for a motion. Motion by Commissioner Corning,
Second.
second by Commissioner Franzine. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those not in favor, say nay. That motion passes. With that, we'll move on to number 4, which is to review and approve the agenda. We do have one change on the agenda. Number 5.11 on the consent agenda is being pulled. The individual can't be here today to speak if there were questions, so with that, I would look for a motion to review and approve the agenda subject to the change.
Also move.
Commissioner Franzine makes the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Brecken. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those not in favor say nay. That motion passes. Consent agenda. Look for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Coring,
Second.
second by Commissioner Franzine. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those not in favor say nay. That motion passes. Move on to number 6, Land Services, 6.1, the 1898 Investments LLC, Rutgers preliminary plat. Mr. Free, how are you today?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, I am great. Thank you. All right, I've got quite a bit of materials here this morning, so I'm just going to organize them a bit. A lot of good land services items this morning. All right, the first item under land services is to consider the preliminary plat that's being considered by the property owner. 1898 Investments LLC, Rutgers Bay Lake Lodge. The address 25039 Tamefish Lake Road and 17698 State Highway 6, Deerwood, Minnesota. It's located in Bay Lake Township. The consideration today is to approve, table, or deny the preliminary plat, conservation, design, development, shared capital resort of Rutgers First Hole Golf Cottages, consisting of 17 total lots, 12 lots with 12 structures with up to 36 bedrooms, resort rooms, dwelling units, 1 common lot, and 1 outlot. All right, so a little bit of history on this one. I think probably a good slide to start out with is on packet page 78. If we could bring that one up. That's good. That just gives you a little bit of a feel for where it's located in general. Rutgers has quite a bit of property, and this one happens to be east of Highway 6. Make sure this works. There we go. This is State Highway 6, and then County Road 14 to the east on the south side. Previously we had resort expansion on the south side of the road, if you'll recall, several months ago. This time the request is to take this existing plat that's already here and this area and change it, sort of vacate that plat and put a new plat in there. So previously in 2006 there would have been a plat for 14 units in this area for shared capital resort. And now we can probably scroll up to that survey that was just above that, Therese. And this is what the final plat's going to look like, but I think it does a pretty good job of kind of showing what's going on. And now the new proposal is to have 12 lots instead of 14. And it's an expanded area, so this is a resort expansion because the area of use is expanding. And so you can see the old plat on this dotted line is this little curvature. The new plat is going to be somewhat more linear, longer, and just a bigger platted area in general. So this old one will go away. There was no buildings placed over the top of it. At this point, it's just green grass, open land, and they're just going to put this new one over the top of it. And so that's generally the concept. The preliminary plat on July 15th for this was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission. I do want to let you know that at that time, though, the preliminary plat was slightly different. They did have 14 units. There was 2 other units that would have been on the south side proposed, and the entire plat that you see here in this sort of oblong shape would have been slightly shifted to the west, just a little bit. When the applicants approached me as to whether that minor change was appropriate to move forward to the county board, I took a look at it, our staff took a look at it, reviewed all the facts, reviewed whether there would have been any substantial changes, anything to be concerned about. And at the end of the day, after we received all the revised stormwater plans, all of the revised estimates, things like that, we don't believe that there's any substantial change between the preliminary plat from the Planning Commission to the revised preliminary plat that you're seeing right now that would have resulted in any different decision from the Planning Commission. So I do want to clarify, there is no increase in impervious, there's no problem with the open space, there's no encroachment issues, it's just simply a slight shift of the plat to the east. The applicants have, we've received all the revised updates and everything checks out just fine. So I just want to let the board know that there is a slight change and adjustment in the layout of the plat and a reduction in the number of units, but nothing that would increase any issues or nothing that would be of anything substantive that would have changed the Planning Commission's recommendation. So I do want to add that for the record. In terms of comments we received, Bay Lake Township did recommend approval. We did receive some comments from the Minnesota Department of Transportation regarding the use of the access on the west side here, and I know the final plat probably doesn't show as good what that looks like, but that'll be just a service entrance and not open to the public to try and meet those needs of the Minnesota Department of Transportation. The Highway Department has commented on this for Crow Wing County, and no strong issues from our Highway Department in terms of the access on the south side, which is what they're proposing at this notch. There's also an access off of State Highway 6 to the north. The DNR has no comments. There's no variances being asked for on this one. Didn't receive any comments from the Lake Association. So that's generally the concept. We received a citizen correspondent from a Miller as part of this as well, I believe concerning some septic concerns. And I believe we recently also may have received another comment regarding the concerns for the septic system on this one. I will say concerning the septic in general, it is a state permit. It's a large enough septic system that's existing so that the NPCA needs to approve any and all permits. We do have conditions that the board has recommended, or the Planning Commission has recommended, that address ensuring that the septic system meets all state requirements and needs to be checked out and fully vetted before any land use permits are adhered to, et cetera, et cetera. So that was a long introduction for this one. I'll take any questions. Otherwise, we'd be looking for a motion.
It's my understanding that Mr. Miller would like to speak to this. Is he online? Mr. Miller, are you online? Not hearing from Mr. Miller, so Commissioner Coring, did you have a...
Yes, Mr. Chair, Jake, so I'm looking on page 54, and a request for board action, and it does have in there 14 lots and 14 structures, so is that request for board action, I would assume that's changed to 12?
So on packet page 55, which is the recommended board action, and we can probably flip back to that.
Hold on.
Oh, yep, no problem.
55 you want?
55?
Hello?
Oh, he's there now.
Mr. Miller,
Yes, this is Steve Miller.
you may go ahead and speak to the preliminary plat for the Rutgers facility.
Yeah, I've been following on YouTube, and I think that it's been covered. But my name is Steve Miller. I live at 1015 North Minstrel Road, Sequim, Washington. I grew up at Bay Lake as a neighbor of Rutgers, and we're not opposed to this plat. We're neutral on as far as our concerns about the proposed plat, but well, I do believe that Minnesota Pollution Control Agency has some serious issues with regard to the Rutgers septic system, and I just want you to take that into consideration when you're considering approval of this plat. That's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Miller. And then we'll go forward with Commissioner Coring's concern.
Therese, could you put the proper one up there? I want to make sure the language is correct.
So Mr. Chair and Commissioner Coring, to your point, page 54 on the front was what the Planning Commission recommended.
Okay.
And so we specifically tried to put on the page 55 there what you would read for your proposed motion. And you'll note that the lots have changed to 12. The only clarification we did get from the applicant was that there's actually going to be one common lot. So I note that for the record where it says 2 common lots, it'll actually be 1 common lot. But otherwise, that's really what you're considering is up on the screen there.
So we want to note that change
Yes.
on the common lot, so
Yep.
that's what we're approving.
Exactly.
Any other questions?
Any other? I'm prepared to make the motion to approve the preliminary plat with the revisions made on pages 55.
In the board packet.
Reduction of units and the changes made for the Rutgers Bay Lake Lodge expansion.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Hoag, second by Commissioner Coring. Any other discussion? Seeing none, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those not in favor say nay. The motion for the preliminary plat for Rutgers has been approved.
Okay.
We'll move on to the final plat, 6.2.
All right, well, Mr. Chair and members of the board, the final plat in this case is of the same resort at the same location. A lot of the facts, of course, are the same, and we've actually already had the final plat on the screen. What I would tell you is the final plat deals more with making sure that we have all of our declarations, any covenants, things like that on file and signed in final form. We have a developer's agreement that's been submitted that talks about the timeliness of what the improvements are going to be on the property, and that deals with best management practices, grading, erosion, and implementation of a stormwater management plan, engineered, which is required. And so we have all that information along with a financial assurity. So all of that information is in the packet, and that really consists of that final plat requirement per our ordinance. So at this point, we'd be looking for a final plat motion for that same resort.
And I would note here also that we would change the 2 common lots to 1 common lot
Yes,
before we make a motion.
thank you.
I would make that motion with the changes discussed, as well as the agreements in place for the Rutgers Bay Lake Lodge expansion.
Commissioner Hoag makes the motion to approve the final plat for Rutgers,
Second.
second by Commissioner Franzine. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Not in favor, say nay. That motion passes for the final plat for Rutgers. We move on to number 6.3, the B Dirt LLC preliminary plat, Hideaway Bay.
All right, well, Mr. Chair and members of the board, I think what we'll do at this point, with your permission, we need to first consider the EAW, the Environmental Assessment Worksheet, and that's listed under 6.4. I'd request that we deal with 6.4 first and then the preliminary plat.
Any objections to moving 6.4 ahead? That'll be fine, go ahead.
All right, no problem. Okay, I think what would be good at this point, Therese, since this is probably a little bit of a visual presentation, if we could go to page 443 in the packet. There we go. And then right after this one, there is the actual preliminary plat. And I apologize, my font is so small. Just above that, there's the actual preliminary plat. I think it's either the north of that or south of that on the board packet. That'll be good while I'm just going to zoom in here really quick so I can read the right page number. Hang on 1 second. It's at 436. Maybe one above that. Apologize. There we go. And then we can just zoom out a bit. That'll give us a good shot of what's going on there. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. All right, even though this is kind of a picture of the proposed development that we're going to deal with if we get to the preliminary plat, I thought it would be good for everyone to look at this as we go through this environmental assessment worksheet. So, Mr. Chair and members of the board, as you know, we've received a citizen petition requesting the preparation of an EAW for the proposed residential plat of Hideaway Bay. It was submitted by Robert Saunders with the Horseshoe Lake Properties Owners Association. It was submitted to EQB on July 18th. It had 259 signatures. The petition was verified by EQB and assigned to Crow Wing County Land Services for a decision on the need for an EAW on July 21st. Per those rules, we have 30 days, not including weekends or holidays, to make a determination of whether an environmental assessment is necessary. Prior to this EAW petition being received, the Planning Commission did recommend denial of this proposed residential plat on July 15th. No government approvals may be given to the project named at the petition, nor any action be taken with a final approval until this EAW need is determined. Construction includes any activities and so forth. The proposed plat includes about 14.5 acres, including approximately 471 feet of shoreline on Horseshoe Lake. It's classified as a recreation development lake within Mission Township. The address is at 14331 Thistle Trail, Merrifield. The developer is proposing, B-Dirt, is proposing to create a conservation development style plat for residential development on the property consisting of 14 individual lots for residential dwellings. No variance is requested. The project as proposed does not meet the mandatory threshold for an EAW, and just to expound on that, the state statutes and rules are clear on when a mandatory EAW is required. This particular, and then it must be commenced. In this particular case, those mandatory thresholds have not been met. So this is falling under the petition section of the rule. And it is the discretion of the RGU, in this case, the county board, as per the Minnesota rules. So we've reviewed the petition. We've reviewed the substantive material in the petition. We've developed findings that are in the packet that are part of a resolution, and we've attempted to objectively look at the facts and look at the plat itself, cross-referencing our own ordinance, the water plan that we have for Crow Wing County, including the Pine River 1 Watershed 1 plan, and all of the information that we could gather that's existing on this, and sort of matched it up against what the concerns were in the petition, of which there were several, and without going through item by item, all of the findings that we have prepared. At this point, we are recommending that, in this case, based on the information submitted and all of the above findings, the project does not have the potential for significant environmental effects. Any effects to the environment will be mitigated through the normal public hearing, plating, and permitting process. Therefore, we're recommending denial, at least that's what's in your board packet, or of the EAW as submitted, on the need for an EAW. That's a pretty broad introduction. I know there might be some questions. I'm happy to go through what the plat is at this time, or anything that would help the chair or members of the board better understand what's going on.
Mr. Chair, if I can, I'd like to make a motion to suggest that we do a resolution of the EAW for this part because of the issue of density on that lake, that I think that there will be an impact with this development.
So Commissioner Brecken is making a motion to require an EAW,
Correct.
if I understand correctly.
Correct.
Is there a second for that motion? Is there a second for that motion? Second for that motion, called 3 times. Motion fails for the lack of a second. We are now to consider the approval, the recommended board action to approve the resolution to deny a citizen's petition requesting an EAW for the proposed conservation development residential plat of Hideaway Bay.
I'll make that motion.
Commissioner Hoag makes the motion to approve the denial of the citizen's petition.
A second.
Second by Commissioner Coring. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those not in favor signify by saying nay.
Nay.
That motion passes. So there will not be an EAW required. And with that, Jake, we'll move on to the preliminary plat for Hideaway Bay.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to get the next paperwork ready to go. We probably can leave that same image on the screen. I think it's a good shot of what's going to happen next year. Okay. Mr. Chair and members of the board, the next item is for the preliminary plat, approve, table, or deny for the property owner of B-Dirt LLC, Joe Ranweiler. This is an address at 14331 Thistle Trail, Merrifield, Minnesota, 56465. And this is for a recommendation to either approve, table, or deny the preliminary plat conservation development of Hideaway Bay, 15 total lots consisting of 14 individual lots for residential dwellings, 1 outlot to include a common area, and 1 lot for an association building. This is all per the preliminary plat and exhibits that were amended and received recently per the board packet. All right. So we can probably go up, look at the screen here. At the July 15th Planning Commission meeting, and as I noted before under the EAW, this was recommended for denial by the Planning Commission. They did have some concerns with how the road width that was leading into the plat was at 14 feet. There was some concern about how that aligned with fire safety, things like that. So just trying to articulate what was in the findings. There was some concerns overall with maybe its applicability to the cluster development in Mission Township Comprehensive Plan. Things of that nature caused them some concern. Since that time, since the Planning Commission meeting, the applicants have made several revisions to the preliminary plat. Again, similar to the Rutgers situation, nothing that I saw that would cause an increase of problems or variances or cause things to be more conforming, but the applicants appeared to have tried to address the concerns that were brought up at the public hearing, written comments, things of that nature. So I'll go over a little bit about what's going on here. So this is about a 15.5 tract of land on the east side of Horseshoe Lake, and you can kind of see in the inset down below what that looks like. Zone shoreline district in the front, and then a little bit to the rear here we have some rural residential 5. Primary use in the surrounding area is single residential lots, things of that nature. There's 2 lots existing right now. Those will be consolidated into one. The applicant has chosen to go the route of what's called a conservation design approach. It allows to have multiple dwelling units or dwelling unit lots on one contiguous parcel, so long as the increased sort of robust standards that are in our land use ordinance are met. This includes a minimum 50% open space, a long-term management plan for the vegetation that's out on site, and a number of different areas where they need to be more restrictive in that regard than a traditional conventional development with a single-family lot. So in this case, they have their 14 dwelling units that are concentrated in the center of the lot. The closest unit is going to be 267 feet from OHW. None of the units are in the first tier, and they have one common association building, presumably for gatherings by the association, at about 160 feet from OHW. There is a proposed dock that has proposed 3 mooring spaces. That is the maximum that's allowed in our county ordinance. So they wouldn't be able to have 14 permanent mooring spaces. They can only have 1 mooring space for each unit in the first tier that's allowed. And so in that case, there'll be 3. They have primary and alternate septic drain field locations, and they've submitted some preliminary sketches and design work for what appears to be an advanced septic treatment system clustered for this development. We do have the soil suitabilities to go along with that, so presumably there are primary and alternate locations should a drain field issue happen many years down the road. There's an alternate site for that as well. They are proposing storage units for the dwelling units. They cannot be rented out to the public. I know the applicant has made some significant revisions to the language regarding how this particular lot 16 is going to be managed in their covenants and closely monitored so that we don't have commercial use occurring on this residential plat with regards to those storage units. The idea is that if someone wants to buy a lot, they could also have a storage unit, is the idea. The open space that's going to be protected on this plat is shown on, I think, Therese, the next slide down, the next page. That could be wrong. Yep. So as you can see, they've modified this since the public hearing on July 15th to include our explanation about what they plan to do. Essentially, the rear of the lot will be left in its natural state except for the driveway and the storage units and, of course, the drain field construction. The area around the units are going to be used for construction purposes, and then there'll be landscape trees planted in those areas to take the place of the primarily, I would call it a cleared zone for construction purposes. And then there's a zone in front here that will have some tree removal, but less than 25% of dominant trees removed, and then no tree removal in this front zone extending about 150 feet. So they've done some adjustments to be more clear on that, and they've also increased, like I said, the width of this driveway to be 20 feet. In terms of the comments that we've received on this particular proposal, Mission Township has recommended denial of this particular plat. And so we've received that. The Highway Department from Crow Wing County has submitted comments with, I believe, with no concern. The DNR, a long time ago when there was proposed to be some variances, had some comments, but has since had no comment on this as there is no variances, so they don't have any comments. I know the Horseshoe Lake Association did provide a number of comments and was part of the EAW that was submitted, so they had significant concerns about the proposal that you see here. And of course, as you probably saw in the board packet, there were a number of comments that we received, many comments, all in opposition to the proposal. And also at the public hearing, there were a number of folks that spoke in opposition for this. And I would imagine there are a number of people here today that may have some concerns about it as well. I'm happy to go over anything else that you'd like me to, or take any questions at this time, Mr. Chair.
I have a couple questions. First of all, the number of moorings for the boats is at 3 because there's no residential buildings in Tier 1? Is that how that's determined?
Well, Mr. Chair, actually, the number of mooring spaces that you're allowed to have is based on the theoretical allowable units in the first tier. Even though there are no units in the first tier, they would be allowed 3 units. The applicants have chosen to not have any units closer than 267 feet. So they still get their 3 mooring spaces because they could. They could have had that.
And that wouldn't matter whether it was a single residential place or a multi-dwelling?
Well, they would only, in the first tier, you're only allowed 3 dwelling units, and whether that's in one triplex, there's 3 dwelling units, or a single family, they're all counted each as units individually.
So I know I'm belaboring this, but if I were to build a house there as an individual, then I would only get 1 mooring? Or would I get 3?
So on a single-family residential lot, there is actually no restrictions on the number of mooring spaces or docks, but it is restricted in a conservation development design. Okay. So in this case, if this was a single family, you could potentially have 2, 3, 4 docks with a number of mooring spaces, and there would be no restrictions.
Another concern that was brought up was that in this association, should there ever come a time when they would be allowed to do short-term rentals? And I think that's a legitimate concern in a development like this. I don't know if you're prepared to answer that or if the developer would be able to answer that, because this is an association. I would assume that there will be conditions that these owners have to meet.
Well, Mr. Chair, when it gets into what's in their covenants specifically in the language, I'll let the applicants or the representation speak to that. But I will tell you that theoretically, if someone wanted to do a short-term rental out here, we do allow short-term rentals on residential properties, so long as they're licensed and meeting all the provisions of our short-term rental ordinance. And again, to their covenants and what restrictions they're going to locally do, I would let the applicant speak to that.
Applicant?
Good morning. My name is Joe Ranweiler, 19522 Love Lake Road. I represent B-Dirt in this plat. We have in our declaration language that restricts the number of times per year that these can be rented. They can only be rented up to 4 times per year, and they must be rented for a minimum of 30 days. At a minimum. So if somebody came and decided to rent a unit for a year for somebody, from somebody, they can. It does not fall into the short-term Crow Wing County rental, which I believe is less than 30 days before it becomes a VRBO. So we put it outside of that and only allowed it 4 times. We feel people should still be able to rent their unit if they decided to, not live there. But we don't want this to be a transient development where people are coming and going on the weekends.
So here's my concern, Mr. Ranweiler, is if you have a 30-day requirement, but I happen to have a pot full of money, and I decide I'll pay that price for 30 days, and I'll have the nicest bachelor party for this weekend that has ever been put on. And that would be to the chagrin of the neighbors right next door, or potentially the lake residents themselves that might be across the lake or whatever. Could that would be a possibility that could happen?
That
I
would be a
assume.
possibility, and it's also a possibility on any home on any lake up here. I mean, if I wanted to rent out my personal home on the lake, I could do the same exact thing. And right now, you could do it, I could do it for 3 nights on my personal home.
Right.
And I could do it then 3 nights later on my personal home, and 3 nights later, and 3 nights, I mean, I could do a VRBO as long as I'm following the requirements. The 30-day requirement, I believe, is going to restrict that from happening. I think you'll have, families that want to come up and maybe rent it for the summer. Or maybe you have a group of people who decide that they're going to summer up here and winter someplace else, and so for 6 months of the year, they want somebody to be in the house, as opposed to just leaving vacant houses. I think vacant houses are probably as much of a problem as the aforementioned, rentals, more often. So if I'm an owner and I want somebody to be able to come for for 6 months of the winter and live in my house, I should be able to. So that's how we wrote the declaration to require that. But the idea is not to have short-term renters ever in there.
Commissioner
Mr.
Coyne.
Chairman, just a comment. As I sit here, it made me think of Commissioner Towidge's, Mr. Houle, because a lot of you don't know who Commissioner Towidge's was. He passed away. He was a county commissioner here. And one of his huge issues was property rights. That, you buy that property, you're paying the taxes, and yes, there has to be some regulations within reason. But I just think we need to really be careful about asking government to put too much of a squeeze on your private property, because it really is your private property. And you talk about your house. So what if it gets to the point where, we tell people, no, you can't rent your house out. I know a lot of people that rent their house out to help them pay the taxes and pay the insurance. It probably was a family cabin that was given to them, and the only way they can hang on to that cabin is to rent it out a few times during the summertime to help them pay for the expenses. But this really is a property rights issue. I mean, you buy the property, you pay for the property. You should be able to do what you want with that property within reason. So I think we gotta, you can chuckle a little bit if you want, but I'm talking about property rights. That's one of the most important things that I think we should have in this country, a free country, so.
Okay, and I know there's a lot of people here who are concerned about this development, and I'm going to allow people to speak. You'll have a 3-minute time limit to speak. I would ask that you not repeat what a previous speaker may have said, but if you have something that is new and enlightening to us, we would certainly encourage you to bring that forward at this time. So if there's anyone who would like to speak, if you'll step up, give us your name and where you reside. Mr. Charpentier.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, lawyers takes 3 minutes to introduce themselves.
Exactly.
There's a reason for that, Mr. Charpentier.
I didn't say there wasn't.
Billable hours.
You folks know that there's just a huge number of pages of information here that was submitted, and I'm not going to try to run through all of that. I can tell you that it looks to me like the Planning Commission took their duties very seriously here, and in looking at the criteria, there were 2 things that they found were lacking. That was whether or not the proposal was compatible with the present land use, and they found that it was not. And secondly, whether the public health, safety, and traffic was adequately addressed, and they found that that was not done either. And both of these are key criteria. You know, you folks have a ton of things to look at that I would say if you were going to review anything, I'd say look at three things. Look at what the fire chief said, because the fire chief said this is not a good deal. And I understand that they've now changed the width of the road, and they're making it 20 feet, but that doesn't make it safe, and I think it's something that really needs to be looked at. The Cross Lake Police Chief, who does the policing for Mission Township, similarly addressed the Planning Commission and said, this is not a good deal, this is not something that should be done. And thirdly, I think if you look in the package, you'll see that there's a hydrologist, Dr. Leety, that put a lot of work into showing that this lake is not sort of your normal lake. It's a closed basin lake, and it can't be compared with lakes that have outlets. And so if you had to look at three things, I'd say look at those three things and say, does this really work? And I just, as a lawyer, have concerns about the fact that this thing, as I'm sitting here, seems like the ultimate in Jello application. I say that from the standpoint that it's just changing and changing shape, and much of what you've got put in front of you, including the declarations, does not reflect what was given to the Planning Commission. I said at the Planning Commission level, and I repeat here, the way this has been presented to you folks and to the Planning Commission, it was not an application that was ready for prime time. I think that continues to be the case. I think that you need to look at this hard. I think it should be denied. I think it should be denied because of all of the things that have been given to you in one manner or another. And if they want to come back and do it right, maybe they can do that. But at this level, I believe it ought to be denied.
Thank you. That was remarkable. That was 3 minutes exactly.
Who knew a lawyer could tell time?
I'm glad that you stepped up to the microphone. Mr. Charpentier.
Eric Lee.
Excuse me one second.
Yeah.
I'm glad you stepped up to the microphone because I was going to ask you to step up there. My question is, Mr. Charpentier said that the police said that this is not good. That's not a real definitive finding.
Right. Is there an overview of the road? I think, what was it, 444? So East Horseshoe Lake Road is a 22-foot wide road, 55-mile-an-hour road. Okay, there's no walking pedestrian path. There's no ATV path, no bike path. So it's 22 feet wide, that's it. 55 miles an hour. That road speed limit will not change due to state law. There isn't enough density on that road because of the east side of the road is a lot of potlatch, a lot of county land. It won't change. You can't change that density enough to make it a 45-mile-an-hour road. That's according to state law. So that's my concern. The other concern is just on the south end of the blue there, that's a hill. And where their proposed driveway coming in is right at the bottom of that hill. Now, it's not a big hill, but it's a hill nonetheless, and bicyclists and pedestrians coming over that 55 miles an hour. Now you're going to get 14 additional residents coming out of that road, or coming off that driveway at the bottom of a hill. Okay, so there's an issue there. My property is 3 to the north, 29699 East Horseshoe Lake Road. We're at the top of the hill. So if I can, have I answered your question as far as the traffic is concerned? I'll get to the public safety part and the mental health and address what Mr. Corian said. My concern, and I agree with you, Mr. Corian, you're a private property owner, you have your rights. I'm a neighboring property owner, and I have my rights, and it's your job to protect my well-being. And by putting 14 additional homes in there that can be rented out right now for 4 times at 30 days a time. That's 56 new neighbors I have every year, 300 feet away from me. Where is my public health? Everyone who's got a dog probably has 2 dogs. Now, 56 new neighbors every year have to teach their dogs how to keep them at home. Where is my health? Where is my safety? Or where is the stand safety who are the property to the south? 2 properties to the south. Your dog ordinance is weak. You don't have an animal ordinance that deals with stray dogs. We tell them, bring them home. We bring them to Hart. We bring them to Babinski's. That doesn't work, especially 56 times a year. My department will not respond to those calls because I'm probably going to be the complainant on them. So the sheriff's department is going to have to respond to those calls. We contract 24 hours a week with Mission Township. Otherwise, Crow Wing County is still the primary law enforcement for Mission Township. So 56 new neighbors a year. Now, who's to say that once all the property's bought up and, yeah, they have their covenants in place, but the association decides we're going to go into short-term rental. And they can change the covenants. So now we've got short-term rental. Now we've got 14 homes having a big bachelor party next door. I don't want to live in my retirement being the one calling the sheriff's office all the time. We know that short-term rentals right now, even long-term rentals, are an issue. And we haven't addressed it adequately yet. All right, now, take a precedent. You take that 14 acres, my brother and sister-in-law and my wife and I decide to take our 16 acres and combine it. And we build 17 homes. We're already in the second tier, the both homes there, of our development. So we've got that big, beautiful lawn out front and having parties all the time. What precedent are you setting? Over on the northeast corner, or northwest corner, in between both lakes actually, you've got 21 acres. How is it going to keep being good until it's bad? You set this precedent right now, we're going to have an issue down the road, and it's going to be bad.
Thank you.
Any other questions? And thank you for earlier. I respect your decision on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who wishes to speak that would have additional information? Step up, give us your name and where you reside.
Dale Johnson, Horseshoe Lake. Short-term rentals, let's talk about that. My neighbor who rents his place, and we can go there right now today. The 15 people, they had 9 cars the other night. They got 2 travel trailers, 30-footers on the property right now. A horse trailer they haul all their water bikes and stuff up with. And in the backyard. Where are my rights? I don't even like to go up front on my dock because there's so many people there. I feel intimidated. My feelings. I'm totally against this.
And I appreciate your comments. I mean, that does fall more in the realm of the short-term rentals, which is an ordinance we have, and we will be looking at that ordinance.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Good morning, Doug Bozer, Inventure Properties, 30189 East Horseshoe Lake Road. So just a couple points. Benton County has set precedent with cluster developments and things like that. At the Planning and Zoning, we urged them, and we also had Township Supervisor Julie Johnson write a letter in regards to this. You need to stop and hit the brakes and take a look at these types of situations very, very carefully. I urge you, please, for the citizens of Crow Wing County, I know what Benton County is going through right now. We've got a lot of cluster developments with failing septic systems and non-existent developers. All of this falls directly back on somebody, whether it be the county or the township. This board's going to decide that today. Who manages a common interest community?
The residents.
Really? So Mr. B. Dirt's going to develop this and walk away. And he's going to allow the residents, the 14 people who are also going to do some rentals, to make their decisions on how it's going to run. I don't choose to have my property ran that way. Mr. Coring, Joe states that, and you state that the property people have rights, right? The owners have rights. We're single-family dwellings. You're imposing the idea that 14 people are going to run their properties the same way we are going to run ours individually. I contest differently. Your septic designs that are on B. Dirt's proposal have over 40,000 gallons of effluent within 400 feet of the property. Do you realize that? Are you willing to go there when it's overflowing, like we have in Benton Township or Benton County and our townships down there? Who's done the review of that, truthfully? Understanding what 40,000 gallons of effluent do when it leaks. I've been there. I have a property adjacent to it in Benton County that it happens, and it happens regularly, and it makes its way to the Mississippi. Congratulations if you guys decide to take this on, because it's on your shoulders. You have no technical data of reviews for the groundwater contamination. You can live with that burden. I won't. When this thing leaks, it's on the shoulders of this county who decide to approve this today, or they can take the attitude of denial and come back and really look at these things if they want to choose to go forward with them, but make the right decision. You have no real remedies to fix the problems that come from a development like this. What happens to the dock system when there's more than 3 boats? I can tell you what happens. They're going to run ashore because 14 people are going to bring at least 1 boat, if not 2, on any given weekend. And yes, this will be transient. At 56, like stated by people before, this is going to be transient. You can't say it any differently. 56 people is more than just a single-family dwelling. So, I ask the board today, what compelling information have you learned that would make you go against your planning and zoning board? I ask that question. The county has a duty and responsibility to do what's right for its citizens, and in this case, the absolute denial of this project is the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. So Jake, to his question about the septic. This is an MPCA-approved septic, and tell us the process of that.
Mr. Chair, my understanding, and I believe Paul Herkenhoff can perhaps speak to this as well, who's on their development team, we'll call it, but this is not meeting the level of 10,000 gallons of flow per day, which would trigger an MPCA permit. I know the gentleman mentioned 40,000 gallons per day. That would obviously trigger a state permit. Paul, I don't know if you have information to the contrary on this?
ahead.
Be up to the chair's prerogative. Yeah.
So we contracted with, I can't remember, Martin Joyce to go out and do soil borings, and then contracted with Shane, and he's on the, I can't remember his last name, but he develops large-scale systems for these type of developments. He's using a pre-treated system that, his comment to me was the water that's being pumped up to the drain field would basically be clear enough where you probably wouldn't drink it, but he said it's that good of system. He said that what we're doing with this is we're doing what's called a managed system. And I suppose staff can speak a little bit more to that. But that system requires that a member of the, or a contracted person, in this case probably Tom Esperson, will go out on a regular basis and inspect that system. So it's a permitted system through Crow Wing County that we are monitoring on a regular basis. So we're less than 10,000 gallons a day. I think we're like, and I'm not sure exactly, 7,600 gallons I think a day of the maximum would be the maximum flow out of there, and it's monitored on a regular basis. So the septic systems that we have around the lakes and stuff like that right now for individual homeowners, none of those are monitored, none of those are looked at. This will be looked at by somebody, and we have to have that operating permit in place in order to keep operating it. If Tom Esperson's comes out there and says this is not meeting the requirements or that it's failing, then the association will be required to bring that up to code. Does that Make sense?
Yep.
So it's a way, way, way better system than than just a standard septic system that we could do. We don't have to do this, but we wanted to.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bozer, you got an additional comment?
Yes, I appreciate his comments. Look up Lake Andrew, Watab Township. Multiple calls to the MPCA when the effluent is overflowing. I understand he's got a managed system, but when the developer goes bankrupt, I'm not saying he is, or who is managing this, right? So we have called many, many times to the MPCA to come out, and we've got multiple pictures. Township Supervisor Johnson knows this very well, and I urge you again to talk with her. You guys are going to a new precedent by going into these systems, right? You're asking an association of people to manage this. It isn't on the developer. In that specific case in Watab Township, the developer went bankrupt. There were no bonds in place, and even at your developer agreement today, you're only asking him to bond to 1.5 times of what? The cost of the sewage system? Manage a sewage system for a year. The association, Mission Township, and the county are going to end up, possibly, at some point, taking this system over. Same as the roads. Watab Township just bonded for $800,000 to take care of a developer's issue that looks very, very similar to this. I can tell you there's a lot of citizens that are not happy.
The county won't be taking over the road.
Well, I'm just telling you that these are the issues that come up with these types of cluster developments. We see it, we know it. So again, I urge the board to really take consideration in this. This is not something you should take lightly. Thank you.
One quick question for you before you leave. On that development, how old was that septic system when it failed?
The first year.
The first year?
Yeah. It still continues to fail today.
Why did it fail in a year?
Well, the developer went out of business, so he went bankrupt, and the county and the township, or the county actually, because the township does not have jurisdiction, did not have the developer bond for anything for management of the system or maintenance of the system, and so basically he just walked away. And there were, I think, 7 homes built at that time. So the sewage just started flowing over.
So the development wasn't complete and...
Still isn't complete today. Unfortunately, that's why the roads are being taken over. So again, I look at this, and even if it's long-term rentals at 30 days at 56 people, there's a lot of traffic. And I'll tell you honestly, so Eric Lee doesn't know this, but I made a citizen's arrest on Sunday. I was passed on that top of that hill by a Porsche Cayenne at about 100 miles an hour.
Where's the chief?
Yeah, he's patrolling the road.
Yeah, he's patrolling. I can tell you that a lot of people, and the citizens that are behind me can attest to this. The traffic does not drive 55 miles an hour there. And at the bottom of that hill, when you have that much more traffic coming out from that corner right there, there will be a serious accident. There will be a problem. So again, heavier traffic, heavier lake access does not mean something better.
Thank you.
Can I ask a quick question?
Commissioner Hoag?
Jake, what were the highway department's comments on that? I know you'd mentioned, but I can't remember.
Well, so let's just see. I know the county highway department simply said that the preliminary plat has no adverse impacts on the county transportation system as presented. East Horseshoe Lake Road, of course, is not a county road. So I'm just looking back to see on Mission Township's comments here. Oh, I'm sorry, unless we had someone from the township that could speak to that a little bit better.
You want to step up to the microphone?
Awesome.
Give us your name and where you reside.
Yes. My name is Bob Steele, and I reside at 28069 East Bass Lake Road in Mission Township. And I am a township supervisor. And I hope that all the board members have had an opportunity to read the letters that we wrote, 2 of them, to the Planning Commission regarding this development. So I'm going to go ahead and speak to that. Say that I'm here to speak for the residents of Mission Township. I've owned property myself in Mission Township for 30 years, and I've been a full-time resident for 13. In 2006, Mission Township developed and adopted a comprehensive plan that I'm sure you're well aware of that outlines the quality of life that residents wanted to maintain and develop in Mission Township. This included no cluster developments abutting Lake Shore. The township is mostly single-family residential. In 2006, comprehensive plan outlines larger lots on both on and off the lake. In 2015, the Township Board commissioned a planning committee to again survey township residents to see where they were at. Results were the same as the 2006 comprehensive plan, with the desire of adding a township website, which we have since done. Residents wholeheartedly supported a quality of life that reflects a more rural setting with single-family residential housing. They supported conservation and green spaces, as reflected in the Township Park, which has over 200 acres of hiking trails, tennis, pickleball, and children's playground. This reportedly is the best township park in Crow Wing County. The township supported safety as evidenced in the township's volunteer fire department and police protection. This development is on East Horseshoe Lake Road, as you see right there. East Horseshoe Lake Road is 3.5 miles long, 3.1 miles, excuse me. And it is on the north side, you have County Road 11, and on the south side, you have County Road 109. This road here, we recently had Bolton and Mink come out and evaluate the roads within our township, and a lot of them are right now at the end of their life cycle, these township roads. East Horseshoe Lake Road is probably one of our worst roads as far as being at the end of its life cycle. I received a bid from Anderson Brothers earlier this spring to reclaim this road to the tune of little over $700,000. This is just one road in our township, and we have 30 miles of road. Now, the increase in revenue from this development is not sufficient to offset the cost of this road. When you're looking at building 14 residences, 15 buildings, cement trucks, and everything else, construction equipment going up and down this road, the increase is going to expedite the demise of this road. And our township right now is in the process of developing a 5-year plan to try to figure out and plan how we're going to pay for these. So if this road comes before we're able to develop a plan to pay for it, develop a plan to minimize the cost to our residents, then the cost will likely fall on Mission Township residents. So we have about 700 residents, a little over 700. Cluster development is not single-family residential and is not conservation motivated. It is business and financially motivated. The density reflected in this type of cluster development is not wanted by Mission Township, by residents of Mission Township. Every township boundary sign that we have says Mission Township, and right under it is a quiet place to be. This is by design, and it's planned by residents. Please hear Mission Township residents saying they do not want cluster development abutting Lakeshore. Vote to support Mission Township culture, our culture. Vote to support Mission Township residents. At the very least, vote to accept an interim ordinance that would put a moratorium on cluster development for 1 year, allowing the township to assess our capacity, township's capacity, to become more involved in planning and zoning. And we're in that kind of just at the beginning of doing that. Thank you very much.
So, Mr. Steele, correct? Is it
Yes,
Mr.
Bob Steele.
Commissioner Coring has a question.
Yes.
for you.
It wasn't really a question, it's just more of a statement, and this is, as I'm hearing this conversation, as I've been on here for almost 9 years.
Right.
I almost, and I'm sure you know this, that you, as a township, you can do your own planning and zoning. You do know that, don't you?
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I almost wish that, that townships would take that on more. I've got one township, Crow Wing Township,
Yes.
that does it there.
Yes.
In my district. Because I think, even though Crow Wing County's one big county, different townships are kind of unique unto themselves. But what we're doing is we got a county ordinance and we're applying it throughout the whole county. And
Right.
if somebody comes in with a permit or an application,
Right.
we apply that county-wide. So that's why, you know, in the future, whatever happens on this,
Yes.
I wish you guys would consider doing your own planning and zoning, and then you've got local control.
That's right.
Of what's happening, because obviously you're passionate about what's happening in Mission Township.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
And we want to, part of our 2006 comprehensive plan was the fact that we would look at, in the future, planning and zoning, that the township would look at doing their own planning and zoning. It wasn't economically feasible at the time, so and we had no need to. I mean, you know, until something like this comes up. Thank you.
One quick thing, I don't know if you know it or not, but to Commissioner Coring's point, that if you were to take it on, Sourcewell does offer some support.
Yes, they do, and we're well aware of that, and I've talked to the gentleman who does Crow Wing Township. Yes.
Okay. Very good, thank you.
You bet.
Your name and where you reside?
Robert Saunders, and I'm at 29578 County Road 3 in Merrifield. I'm Horseshoe Lake Property Owners Association President, and I just wanted to cover highlight a couple small things, because I know you have the documents in front of you. Horseshoe Lake is an extremely dense, populated lake. We have 248 lots on an 888-acre lake. That's about 3.5 acres for every home, or for every lot. When you look at other area lakes, they're 2 and sometimes 3 times as big. And I'm not talking about Pelican, I'm talking about Edward, Mission, Upper and Lower Mission, those lakes. So we're an extremely dense, populated lake already. To put 14 units on the East Horseshoe Lake would be a 10% increase in one fell swoop. Activity on the lake is high now. We're seeing 1 to 2 homes, maybe 3 or 4 in some years, that are being converted from that cabin where you go 3 weekends a year to that year-round home. So the density on our lake is a critical factor. Our members, 80% of them, over 80% of them, sent you a note or an email or a letter saying they were opposed to this. Our board unanimously had a resolution that was in the packet. Mission Township unanimously endorsed that letter, and the Planning Commission voted 4-1. So all of these entities have overwhelmingly rejected this project, and I would encourage you to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a side note on that, there's going to continue to be a lot of development, and turning the seasonal homes into four or year-round homes. I was going to say 4-season homes, but I think Jake would tell you that we're seeing a tremendous increase in permits for those kinds of situations. We're seeing a huge influx of people from other areas of the state to come up here, and now they can work remotely. That's now a part of our life. And so we're going to continue to, I think, for at least a few years to see that growth factor. So to your point, the density will be 12 months out of the year rather than, say, 6 months out of the year. So, yes, sir. Your name and...
My name is Dennis Galatowicz. I'm on 14378 Mission Park Drive in Mayfield, Minnesota.
Can I just slow you down for 1 second? And would you just say your last name real slow for an old guy?
Galatowicz.
Galatowicz, thank you.
It only has 12 letters.
Well, I'm going to do it phonetically.
So I had prepared 5 minutes because that was at the last hearing they allowed that. I'll nip and tuck this and get it down to the 3, hopefully. Our town comprehensive plan unambiguously states that cluster developments are not allowed or desired within the shoreland zone. This language is consistent with the prevailing density requirement of your own conservation development ordinance. I quote your ordinance. Where previous development has been established, you must determine whether the new proposal conforms to the current prevailing densities before even considering a conservation development, end quote. This language would seemingly prohibit this cluster development within our town's fully utilized, conventionally developed shoreland zone. Furthermore, your ordinance claims that it will respect our comprehensive plan. I'll quote your ordinance. It is not the intent of this ordinance to repeal, abrogate, or impair any existing laws, rules, easements, covenants, or deed restrictions. However, where this ordinance imposes a greater restriction, the provisions of this ordinance shall prevail. We have 2 developments on our lake, one in the West Basin, one on the East Basin, that provide diversified options on each basin for different socioeconomic groups. There is the former Sunset Ridge Resort, which has 6 cabins on 360 feet, which is half the density of what this development is proposing. And then we have Robidoux Resort in the West Basin, which has 14 seasonal and 6 cabins. And so our lake does offer the socioeconomic diversity that you look for in your comprehensive plan. And I would ask that you consider the significant financial resources and emotional resources expended by near neighbors to this kind of proposed development, which was never anticipated. I'm also asking you to have deference to our community standards that BDIRT knew existed prior to going down this path. And the people relied on the ordinances that are in place when they made their emotional decisions on where to invest, where to retire, where to stay, where to have a lake home. Under your ordinances, using conventional design standards, BDIRT can administratively develop 7 lots on these parcels without any hearings. They can just walk into the administrator's office tomorrow and do it under conventional development and fit within our community standards. And only 2 of these lots would be lake lots. It is clear that this proposed development offers no conservation benefit. It doubles the density from 7 to 14 versus conventional design standards, and increases the number of lake lots by 700% from 2 to 14. The only reason the conservation development model is being used here is to dramatically increase residential density and not to preserve the community's standard or provide an environmental benefit. Ordinances are simply a means of achieving a purpose. They allow citizens to have a reasonable degree of assurance that community standards that were present will remain consistent from the time they build their home or remodel their home or make economic decisions about their home. It is easy to forget the purpose of the ordinance is the only reason we have an ordinance. It is easy to focus on the numbers, the setbacks, the densities, the septic systems, and not realize those provisions are only there to perfect the ordinance's purpose. The first line of your ordinance in section 1.2 reads, and I quote, "It is the purpose of this ordinance to protect, preserve, and enhance the quality of the lakes, rivers, forests, etc. of Crow Wing County for future generations." This development fails that test, among others, and should not be approved. Thank you for your consideration. And if you guys have any questions on forest parcelization and conservation developments, I submitted a document to the prior board about that. I would love to talk about that and why this cluster development doesn't fit here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Kristen Galatowicz, 14378 Mission Park Drive. I just want to say straight out, I respect property rights that you guys are bringing up that we don't want to impinge upon. And I also respect the right of the developer to develop. However, you have more than just the numbers to look at that Mr. Frey has, very professionally provided to you that this development meets. In fact, he presented to you that there's revised plats that attempted to address some of the concerns. But you have other criteria that you're authorized to use to decide whether this development is appropriate for Horseshoe Lake. First of all, I do want to address a couple of things that were said, and one of which is that there will be no development in the first tier. Can you just flip to that? I think it's 436. Decide whether this development is appropriate for Horseshoe Lake. So the reason that they didn't choose to locate in the second tier or nothing in the first tier except for the clubhouse is there's a bluff there, so it prevented them from actually locating properties within that front zone. When the language that the conservation development is more restrictive, I would say it's a misnomer. Because, as indicated by Dennis previously, conventional development would actually only allow 3 lots along the lake, had this been parcelized that way, whereas this is obviously now going to provide 14 homes access, and 14 homes plus a clubhouse on a property that otherwise would fit just at maximum 7. Again, the developer has addressed some of these things, like the roads being widened. But still, I want to point out that even though the roads have been widened, it still didn't address the fire chief's letter in which he had a concern about the water source points for access for putting out the fire. And also, and more particularly, is that the clubhouse sits in front of all of the properties and there's no access whatsoever to get to that in the event that there's a big party down there and there's a fire. Additionally, that pathway that leads down to the clubhouse is only a 4-foot wide path, and I do believe that the ordinance, as I read it, requires a 50-foot wide path, and probably for the reason that it would necessitate or provide access for fire suppression at that location. More subjectively, your ordinances require, as part of the plat design standards, specifically, I'm reading from the ordinance, regard shall be shown for trees, wetlands, steep slopes, watercourses, historic natural features, or other similar conditions. Plans shall be submitted to minimize the impact on these natural features. Can I have you go to 444, please? Take a look here. Now take a look at those lots. Those are trees. That is all trees. Now that's a winter or a late fall view, and the brown looks to be just field, but it's not. I've got a Google map that indicates that 100%, nearly 100% of that lot is trees. So with regard to your ordinance purpose and criteria, that it should minimize the impact on these natural features, there's just no way possible. In your conservation development design criteria, processing criteria ordinance, it additionally sets, so twice in your ordinances that I could find, that a conservation development design criteria should at the natural features included in open space shall generally be maintained in their natural condition unless they are managed. Now, I understand there's this open space requirement, but that's not the natural environment that's going to be left. That's going to be basically clear-cutting the trees to allow for 14 homes, a septic system, potentially an alternate septic system if the first fails to test, mini storage facility in all of those roads. I don't know how you cannot clear-cut this property or disturb the natural features that are there. So I implore you that while I understand that the mathematical features may be met with this plat, you have other subjective criteria that can be looked at, and actually you are charged with looking at as part of these developments. So I would ask that you do look at those, and when you do, you will find that this development would need to be denied. Thank you.
Thank you. Jake, go
Mr.
ahead.
Chair, I of course want to continue any comments we have. Just wanted to address, I know there was a comment that came up about a bluff. It's not our understanding that there is a bluff as per the definition of our ordinance on this property.
Say that again.
I know there's, Kristen, I believe, had mentioned that there may have been a bluff on the property. Our surveyor, or the surveyor that's required to do the plat is required to look at a bluff analysis, and we don't believe there's any bluffs on the property.
Okay, and Joe, before you speak, the lady behind you was up first, so I'll allow her to, if you'll come forward.
Was that directly in response to that? You want to finish that discussion first?
Go ahead.
My name is Jeanette Leet. I'm a hydrogeologist. My PhD work focused on...
I'm going to stop you just for one quick second. And then if you'll really try to project your voice, if somebody's hearing impaired in the room, we want them to be able to hear, or online. So I know that's a struggle sometimes for some people, but just yell it out is all you have to do.
My name is Jeanette Leet. I'm at 29993 East Horseshoe Lake Road in Mission Township. I did a master's degree on lake water clarity and the relationship of lake water clarity to phosphorus. And I did a PhD on the impacts of land disturbance and the transport of phosphorus versus undisturbed land under forest cover. And I did all the field work for the Crow Wing County Geologic Atlas. I had two considerations to start with, and I thought perhaps I would get a chance to meet with Jake beforehand so we could get comments on one page for the accurate statements on the EAW denial, and maybe we could still do that. But anyway, considerations that pertain specifically to this lake make it possible that standard protections would not be adequate for this lake particular, and that the cumulative impacts of actions on this lake may worsen or things because it would set a precedent for more intense development. My points are that groundwater does indeed reach this lake. Water flows from the surface to the water table, and in this type of sandy area, quite quickly. That's why it's mapped on the geologic atlas in the hot tone that indicates a very vulnerable area. And speed of water movement to the water table in the surface is one of the primary ways we figure that out. Then the water follows the slope of the water table. And what you can think of if you're trying to figure out how the water table works and you're standing there, you can have in your mind that the surface water table is a subdued replica of the land topography if stuff underneath your feet is relatively uniform. So if you're standing in a sand pile or a sand dune and it goes like this, well, the water table is going to be subdued and it's going to go like that. So when you're standing near a lake, the water table is probably coming up toward underneath your feet, and what you pour from a bucket onto that surface is going to then get down the slope to the lake. It won't take off sideways somewhere else. The regional groundwater flow may indeed do that, and in a big sense, that's what the groundwater maps show you. Like it'll say it's going off to Pine River, it's going off to Mississippi River on some places on the Crow River map. But that doesn't mean that the lake's own individual surface watershed, and therefore the derived groundwatershed, doesn't push water to the lake. My second point is that a closed basin lake keeps what you give it. The nutrients that end up dissolved in that water or carried in surface water into the lake get to the water, and there's no place else for it to go. Now, the very fine stuff will end up out in the middle of the lake on the bottom. If you're lucky enough to have a sandy lake, there probably hasn't been all that much getting into the lake and getting down to the bottom. Maybe you're lucky and you have one of these lakes with a very small surface watershed around it. That would be Horseshoe Lake. So this lake has been able to stay there and be bright blue and wonderful, despite what we are doing to it, its neighbors, with, say, our septic systems, where the water does get to the surface water table and nutrients carry in that get to the edge of the lake. And why has it managed to stay nice and clean? Well, I might have to admit that if you look at the most recent SECI steps for the lake water clarity, that the east basin, that's our side of the lake where this development is, has gotten slightly less clear. And that could be a bad indication. But what is protecting us now is the fact that rooted vegetation has a chance to absorb some of the nutrients that were in that water. And so if you leave the lakeshore natural, which is what we are advised to do as much as possible, you will end up giving the water that has come through the system, unfortunately quite quickly in our case, gets to the edge of the lake, and then the plants are there and they can use it up. Now, if you have the lake go down like it is right now and you decide that's an area you ought to mow, or, oh no, maybe even weed, you are erasing some of the protection that the lake originally had and which kept it clean. Now, as has been mentioned, Crow Wing County and Department of Natural Resources works against that by telling people that they should only remove weeds from the area where they actually need to get on the lake with their dock, and I think something like 15 feet is the maximum. Now, if we had a good air photo, this is actually one of the best areas of the lake. This lake, this edge, water's edge, currently provides quite a bit of good protection in terms of water quality because it has not been cleared. It's not a nice sandy beach, and there's even a bit of a wetland there, giving even more vegetation a chance to take up the water. So there is one blow that this lake is sure to suffer if it's developed very intensely as people use that lake shore area and disturb that vegetation that will take that protection away. And I know I've gone way over, but I used to teach this stuff and they gave me 45 minutes a time. Let's see, what, the OHW. OHWs don't keep water from flooding. It is a line drawn on a map at the best idea of where water has been at that place long enough to leave a mark on the landscape. And much as meteorological normals have to be recalculated at intervals, a lake doesn't necessarily have a forever OHW. And this is actually one of the other things you could write down about closed basin lakes. If there's been a period of time where water levels have been low, some trees can grow pretty fast, and maybe the 50s, the water had been low, and trees had a chance to grow, and you'd go out and you'd make an OHW determination, and you'd think, because there were trees here of a certain variety, that that was an established level you could rely on to keep your feet from getting wet. You know that ridge we were just talking about along the side of Horseshoe Lake? That's actually a former lake edge. It's a former beach. And there are, the first level, former beach, has pretty much been obliterated by people putting in docks. And what's there now, right at the edge, is an ice push ridge. And it's been shoved up against what was a former beach. That second level, the upper former beach, is probably a level that Horseshoe Lake could adopt again unless the outflow, the surveyed level of the outflow to the northwest, were able to take water away. Near Buffalo Lake, Minnesota, Lake Pulaski came back up to its former beach level, much to the chagrin of people who don't like bass in their bedrooms. And I have no idea what that outlet cost or who they got to pay for it, but that's a closed basin lake. And
I'm going to have to interrupt you.
That
This
was
is
my
this is
last
getting
point
pretty
anyway.
extended, so I think we've received your information and your concerns. I would encourage anybody that wants to take on the DNR on an OHW issue, you're sure welcome to do it. I know I've dealt with white sand and red sand in Baxter when I was a council person out there, and that's a pretty rigid number that they put out there, and it's nigh onto impossible to change. So, and for development purposes, I think we have to have a line.
no, they get redone upon request.
I would, you should go talk to the hydrologist for the DNR locally, because I have not seen it happen. Anything else? Yes, sir. Name and where you reside.
Good morning. My name is Ron Fillmore. I'm probably the newest member of Crow Wing County and one of the newest members of Horseshoe Lake. I just moved from a family farm that's been in my family since 1884 in Hope, Michigan, in central Michigan, which is very similar to this area. One might ask, why would I leave and move here? Well, I have grandkids in Minneapolis, and there's nothing better than being closer to your grandkids. I had one requirement on the move, and that was to be within a 3-hour drive of the Twin Cities. My wife is a chemist. I'm a retired executive, but my real love is farming, and I've been a member of this farm forever, and I've been running it for the last 5 years. So I give you that context to tell you I looked everywhere within a 3-hour drive of the Twin Cities. And I want to compliment you all in Crow Wing County on what you've done in this region. Because when you look at the surrounding areas, nothing competes with what I was looking for, with desirability to make my new home. As I said, this is not a tourist for me. This is where I'll live. I don't plan on moving again. Why did I choose Horseshoe Lake? We looked at thousands and thousands of homes that you can look at on Zillow. My requirement was we're also going to put the boat in, and we're going to go check these lakes. I want to see how busy they are on a weekend. I want to see how busy they are on weekdays. I want to see how good the fishing is. Most importantly, I want to see the quality of the water and the beach. My wife is also a chemist, so like the former speaker, she looked at water data that would not be typical of a normal buyer to look at it. We chose Horseshoe Lake because of the quality of the water, the sense of the community, and the surrounding area, and the quality of the beach. I also have family members that are police officers, county commissioners, and township supervisors. So I looked at different ordinances. To my naivety, I realized that you had to have a certain amount of frontage to build on. I didn't realize that you could actually take a 450-foot piece of frontage and potentially subdivide it. My issue. Before closing, I saw the township had a meeting and that your appointed zoning commission voted this down. So in good faith to my wife, I said, we can move forward to this because we don't want to live just north at 29367 Surfland Road, which is just north of this potential viewpoint, to see an additional 14 boats zipping by out of a boat launch that doesn't have room for 14 cars. And even though there's only 3 mooring sites, let's use our common sense, folks. There'd be 14 boats there. They're going to be anchored somewhere. Who's going to support it? And also with a farming background, I know that where effluent goes, where water goes, and some point in time somebody's going to have to deal with that. And now I'm learning that would actually be the residents of that. So I love it here. I want to compliment you on this area. It's a fantastic area to call my new home. But I also think that I hope that you take on the decision of what are your appointed commissioners from a zoning commission in their recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Joe, I forgot you. Sorry.
A lot of people do. I just want to address a couple of the concerns, and then I'm going to ask Paul and Mitch to address some of the water runoff issues and things like that we've been talking about. We're not asking for a variance. We're not asking for a conditional use permit. Everything that we have on that plat meets or exceeds the required ordinance. A lot of the stuff that we've done, we've gone above and beyond. That ridge that is talked about, it's not a bluff. We've surveyed it. We know for sure it's not a bluff. We are, instead of the standard 100 feet setback on the lake, we are 267 feet setback from the lake. There is areas on the plat that we've designated as no-mow zones in front of the lake in order to protect it. We've got professionals that have went and looked at the septic systems, have went and looked at how all of this lays out and does. Crow Wing County, Jake, does an exceptional job of running us as a developer through a whole bunch of steps. This thing started, I mean, we're probably 4 or 5 months into this, where we start with a dirt meeting, a DRT meeting that's which you guys are familiar with, that gets us through the process. And as we go through this, we address all these concerns. There's been a number of discussions as far as the rentals. I'll try to address that one more time. In order for association to change their declaration, it needs to have a vote of the association members of a 2/3 majority. And then also the mortgage companies that have mortgages on those need to sign off in order to change the declaration. From the developments that we've done a number of them in Crow Wing County, as you know, and we've done a really good job of taking care of and doing a good job and following through with what we've said we're going to do on developments. Every one of those developments have turned out fantastic. I mean, we've done that in Crow Wing County. So I think that this, like I say, meets or exceeds the ordinance. I think that we should be allowed to develop property in accordance with something, which is the ordinance, and I believe that we've done that. So does anybody have any direct questions for me or concerns that I could address? And once again, I'm going to ask.
Doesn't appear that they have any.
Paul and Mitch, if you would please.
Paul, if you'll give us your full name and where you reside.
It's a long one. Paul Herkenoff, 24314 Smiley Road. I'm the surveyor for the project. I'll just touch on a few things and try not to repeat things that have been said. Just want to talk a little bit about the density on this project. You know, we're close to 15 acres on this project, and we're asking for 14 residential units. So that's a little over an acre per unit. Now, if you look at a single-family lot on Horseshoe Lake, the minimum requirement's under an acre, 40,000 square feet. 60,000 square feet for off-lake parcels. I did the calculations with an administrative subdivision. We could get 9 to 10 parcels out of this. There's 2 parcels of record. Each parcel's allowed 5 units per the Shoreland District requirements. Just to go over a little bit what Joe said, I think what this comes down to is the ordinance. When we start these projects as a contractor, we come into Crow Wing County and we meet with the development review team, and they lay out the requirements for these projects. We submit the applications, they review them. If we meet the requirements, they allow us to move forward. As Jake stated at the Planning Commission meeting, this meets the requirement. And I'm not saying you're going to do it, but if we don't get stuff approved that meets the requirements of the ordinance, how do we handle future applications? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Paul. Anyone else?
Oh, he's got Mitch, Jake, or...
Okay. And then there's one other person.
Mitch Brinks, 11914 Joneswood Circle, Baxter, Minnesota. I was part of this project, did the wetland delineation. Also dealt with the EAWs and many things, so that's kind of why I was here. But I think a lot of this has been covered, but I just wanted to emphasize, especially on the environmental side, stormwater and septics in particular, I think are being well managed on this project. The goal for runoff, as you guys know, is get it into the ground and out of the lake, out of the surface water. Just the distance, the proximity to the lake for where these buildings are built, and the fact that there is a proposed engineered plan in place to infiltrate that water. We're not doing surface ponds. It's going back into the ground, which cools it off, provides the treatment. And with regard to the septic, I'm not a septic inspector currently. I was at one point in the past. But that Advantex system that they're proposing, it is state-of-the-art. I mean, ask any septic professional. That Advantex system, like was mentioned, you could pretty much drink the water that comes out of that. So with those issues, there's no impacts to wetlands that I'm aware of. That's all I'm going to speak to now. Thank you.
Thank you. This person here, then I'll get to you.
My name is Roseanne Stans. I'm the family that owns the 2 plots of land just south of where this development is planned. So you know how significantly opposed I am. But I'd like to address 2 issues. The gentleman who I believe is from B Dirt mentioned that it's 15 acres and there are 15 homes planned. But when you look at that plot, the homes don't begin, as he mentioned. I call it a bluff. They say it's not. But the land from the lake shore to where the homes begin has no homes. The land from East Horseshoe Lake Road to where the homes begin is about 1/3 of that acreage. So when you consider density, those 15 homes are being built on approximately 7 acres. My other issue is, at the previous occasion, on the 15th, the person who voted in favor of the development cited one major issue, and that was the septic system, which was located just south of the storage units. She felt strongly that there needed to be an alternative septic system. And I noticed today on that map, I'm not sure which, but the latest plat, that septic system is now at an angle southwest of that storage unit. But there still is not an alternative septic system in that plan. Thank you for listening, and I certainly hope you oppose this development plan.
All right, thank you.
Hello, my name is Michael Lunzer, and I'm located at 30174 County Road 3 in Merrifield. I'd just like to make 2 points. One is a comment about the ability of an individual who owns a property to be able to develop that appropriately. And I think that's a really good perspective within the context of the ordinances. My neighbor last year on this lake has a home and a guest cabin with a garage underneath it. And he had asked the county if he could develop that garage underneath his guest house into additional guest quarters. And that was rejected because it doesn't meet the criteria of the lake, which most of us property owners have relied on, which is that you can have one home and one guest home on a lakefront lot. And so that's my first point, is that we've all relied on that expectation and that ordinance as we've purchased and built our homes. The second point I'd like to make is that the developer keeps mentioning that they've met the ordinances. And as we've heard from other speakers, they've met the numbers in the ordinances. But what I've heard is that the ordinances also require clustered developments to meet the criteria of the character of other surrounding properties. So from that perspective, again, we've all been expected to meet the ordinances for our property development. And I'd like to say that I don't believe this developer has met the criteria of meeting the ordinances that apply to this land. So I'd encourage you to reject this development and appreciate your considerations.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm a civil engineer.
Well, I want to try this one more time. Mr. Golodowicz.
Yeah, and I have my notes here in written form, and I'd like to hand them forward. Maybe Jake can send them up to your. So, but I actually made a map of my assertion that only 7 lots can be developed there. And as a civil engineer, I know how to do this. And I created a document on, I believe, the 3rd page that you can look at that does the 40,000 square feet on the front end of the lots and the 60,000 going back. And then when you get out of the shoreland area, then it's even more restrictive. And I put on each one of those the number of square feet and where they fall. And then Jake keeps saying that you can have 3 lake lots here. These 2 lots are only 425 feet across. We have a 150-foot requirement on Horseshoe Lake. That means the 425 feet, because Jake's including or following the meander, which is 471 feet, but those 2 lots are only 425 feet across, which means you can only have 2 lots. And your ordinance further requires that you can subdivide a parcel of land that's under 10 acres. And so you can't combine those and then subdivide them administratively. You have to do them individually, which means that each one of those lots would have to be subdivided in the manner that I've done it, and you can't do a strange using the 100 or 471 feet with parallel lines that are perpendicular to the shoreline, because to do that, you'd have to cross the boundary between the 2 lots. It's just not permissible under your ordinance. Your ordinance requires that each lot, if it's under 10 acres, can be subdivided, and to do that, you don't have 300 feet on any one of those lots. So you can only have 2 lake lots, and I've provided a map of my calculations as to that, and I assume you're looking at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jake, can you address that issue?
Well, Mr. Chair and member of the board, I don't remember everything I've ever said at any time, but I don't recall with respect saying that you could have 3 lots on that lake. I've tried to stick to just this proposal, which is the density that's allowed. So I don't mean to say that in any sort of negative connotation, but I just don't recall. The ordinance is what it is. You get to have a certain lot width, a certain lot size, and on a recreation development lake, I will just say it is what it is. Another thing I wanted to bring up was, I know there was a comment about there is no alternative septic system on the plat. We've received from the surveyor primary location for the drain field and an alternate based on soil boring. So we do believe that there is an alternate drain field location that's been identified at this time. And then, Mr. Chair and members of the board, I will also say, I know we're in the middle of comment here, but if there's any questions about the differences between conventional development and a conservation design development and why there is allowance for this versus that, we can certainly get into that, not as a basis for whether or not staff feels about anything, but if there's any questions about that, we can certainly go through that.
Thank you. Mrs. Golodowicz?
Thank you. Yeah, just in follow-up, I think we need to be careful about saying that it meets the requirements of the ordinance. Again, I mean, I have these printed out right here for you, but I'm sure you're familiar with them. part of your ordinances do require, as a conservation development design criteria, these other subjective factors. So again, if it were strictly numerical factors that BDIRT and their professionals could spend every waking hour curtailing it to that. I'm talking about all the other factors that everyone that came here today are speaking about that aren't the numbers, and that's what you're charged with deciding here today. Otherwise, it would just be an administrative plat that Jake could roll the numbers through with the developer and approve. You're here to look at all of those other subjective factors, and I just ask again that you please do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, could I say something?
Mr.
Chair,
Corey.
and I don't mean to put anybody on the spot, but Sue, do you have any comments at all, Sue Maskey? Sue is my appointee on the Planning and Zoning Commission. This is a great time for me to tell you that I really appreciate you for, like, I don't even know what we pay, $75 or $100 a meeting for you to get there and get all beat up. And you're a citizen volunteer. And so I know that, Sue, you worked for the county for how many years?
17 years.
17 years. And so when I appointed you, I wanted you to be the kind of person that was going to go by the ordinance that we have. And so I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I do want to hear from you before we make a decision here.
Okay.
Thanks, Sue.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, my name is Sue Maskey, 16335 County Road 2, Brainerd, Minnesota. And yes, I am a member of the Planning Commission. I am the member that voted against the denial of this preliminary plat. So I want to just kind of explain why. Worked for the county for 17 years, went to many trainings by the Minnesota County Insurance Trust attorneys. One of the things they've always told us was, you cannot base your opinion on public testimony unless there is good, sound facts to support the public testimony. At the meeting, I listened to many of the area residents say the impact on the county, on the East Horseshoe Lake Road. Impact on Horseshoe Lake, as it doesn't have any invasive species right now. However, this lake has a public access. Granted, we're thankful that it doesn't have any aquatic invasive species right now. However, with the public access, you're going to get it eventually. I mean, zebra mussels are carried in, and it's been a proven fact by waterfowl, ducks, geese, whatever. So eventually it could get there. So they didn't, and having 14 residences on 14 plus acres, whatever the acreage was, I can't remember. That's one house per acre. So, yes, they're only allowed 3 mooring sites. So these people that buy into this or have one of these lots, yes, they may put their boat in at the public access, and they may not. They may go to another lake. You're only allowed 3 mooring sites, so it means you got 3 permanent watercrafts there. And then I looked at this plat as every dwelling is 267 feet back from the lake, roughly. You could have 2 dwelling units there 100 feet from the lake. You could have septic systems 100 feet from the lake. So I looked at it as protecting the quality of that lake, as these structures are back farther than what is allowed by ordinance for a residential lot. Septics are way back farther from where 100-foot, than the 100-foot setback for a residential lot. So I kind of looked at all the factors. I did listen to the public testimony, and I understand their concerns. But I based my decision on the plat met the requirements of the county ordinance for conservation design. There was no sound facts as to what impact that would be on Horseshoe Lake. Added boat traffic, you're going to get that with the public access. Whether you have 14 additional dwellings on there. And then I also looked at the surrounding area. The whole area, I mean, Horseshoe Lake, other than Robidoux, I think, is all residential. There is a 14-unit development 400 feet from where this proposed plat is. So when I made my decision to vote against the denial, that's what I base my facts on. So I'm open for any questions if you have any.
Any questions?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Anything else?
I would just like to add that it is maybe congruent with the county comprehensive plan, but it is not congruent with our township comprehensive plan. Our township comprehensive plan represents the citizens of our township. And we, as you asked before, we are looking at and going to be considering and evaluating whether or not we need to adopt our own, take over our own planning and zoning. And we're taking a serious look at that. But it requires, in order to do that, it requires our annual meeting, the patrons coming to our annual meeting and voting on that. We only have that once a year, and that's in March. And so we can only take a look at that seriously in March and vote on that. So our hands are tied right now to be able to do that. And we're going to really want to and take a serious look at that. So, but this is our comprehensive plan. And I know that townships and county boards need to work together, as much as possible. So I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. You had one additional comment?
Just one quick one. Your ordinances are made for your county and your lakes in this county. Mission Township only has 2 lakes, so to speak, in their township, totally within the township. Bass Lake and Horseshoe Lake. We have part of Mission, we have a little piece of Pelican, but our township is writing our comprehensive plan for those lakes and for those small lakes. You have to look at ordinances and write ordinances for all the lakes in the county. But then it becomes incumbent upon you to look and see whether you need to apply a different thought process rather than just going by, this is what the rules say. If you meet all the rules, you get to go forward. You need to look at the situation. Now, the couple prior gals said that you're going to get minimal lake with boats. But I live right next to Robidoux Resort. And on any given weekend, there are 3 boats besides the 7 that are already moored there that are beached for the weekend. And there's 2 or 3 jet skis right alongside them on any given weekend. I understand that. They were there before I bought my property 30 years ago. I understand it, and I live with that to be on Horseshoe Lake. But I don't think we need to do that to the residents on the other side of the lake. I don't think it's fair. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bozer?
Just one quick statement. Paul, I appreciate you bringing Sue up today with the one dissenting vote. I would urge you to think about what the planning and zoning spoke about that night. There were 4 dissenting votes. If you really want to hear what they had to say, why they denied the development, I'd suggest you talk to them as well.
Actually, all 5 of us were either here or on by video. All 5 of us were listening to the whole meeting.
But your planning and zoning board made a decision 4-1 to deny that request.
Yes, I understand that, yeah.
All right, I think that concludes the remarks. I don't see anyone scrambling to get to that microphone.
Mr. Chair, if you may call for someone on Teams if there's anyone online.
Is there anyone on the Teams meeting who would like to address this issue? Anyone on Teams who wants to give us an opinion or some new information on the Hideaway Bay development? Hearing none, I would look for a motion.
Mr. Chair, if I can.
Commissioner Brecken.
We've heard a lot of compelling information today that...
Chair, point of order. You need a motion to close the public hearing.
We're not
We
having a
didn't,
public
we
hearing.
didn't open a public hearing. I just took comments.
Not a public
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Commissioner Brecken?
But we have heard a lot of compelling information today, so I would like to make a motion to accept the Planning and Board of Adjustments recommendation to deny the Hideaway Bay preliminary plat.
Commissioner Brecken makes a motion to accept the Planning Commission's motion or direction to deny the Hideaway Bay development. Do I have a second? Do I have a second? Do I have a second? That motion fails for lack of a second.
Mr. Chair, today, well, along this whole process, there's been a lot of inaccurate information, as even recent as today. A gentleman spoke of 40,000 gallons a day into this system, when in reality, I think we're talking, under 8,000. The fact that the mention of a bluff, which again, there is no bluff. Fire protection, I don't know what the fire chief is referring to. I would love to have more detail on that, but being a fireman for 15 years, I can't see anything in this design that would halt a development of such. Road safety, I never really got a true answer on that, but I look at the site, the ingress egress of this. Obviously, there's always maintenance or wear and tear on road systems. That's just that we all live with that throughout the county, and there's not a lot we can do about that. The county's growing in population. We got to grow with that. And then the fact that we have 56 new neighbors. Reality is there's 14 units. We will have 14 neighbors, if you will. It may not be the same people every day that you see, but I believe that this development has, again, exceeded the requirements of the ordinance, and I would be prepared to make a motion for approval unless there's other comments that commissioners would like to.
So Commissioner Hoag, you're making a motion to approve the development of Hideaway Bay.
That's correct.
Do I have a second? Second. Second by Commissioner Coring. And because this board apparently is going against the Planning and Zoning Commission, we are required to have our own findings of fact, so I will read those, go through those now. So number one, and this references Article 9 of the ordinance. Number one, the question is, does the proposed plat conform to the county's comprehensive plan? The answer is yes.
Mr. Chair?
Sorry?
Could we maybe just take if you guys are inclined towards approving it, maybe what we should do is complete the other items on our agenda, give Jake an opportunity to bring back a draft of some proposed findings based on what he's heard from you.
Okay.
Would that meet with your approval?
Sure. Is that okay, Jake? So,
Yes, and Tim, are you thinking at the end of this meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll bring them back yet today.
okay. So we're going to hold off on that, and we're going to go to the county engineer. Item number 7.1, advertise sealed bids for project CP 18-113-03, culvert replacement.
Oh, sorry. Yep, let me get out of your way. You can leave it. Oh, you're coming.
Yes, he was.
I'll be free.
Jake.
If you'll just go ahead, Tim.
Okay. Mr. Chair, members of the board, I have two items for you today. I'm sorry, I have to get a little organized here. I was Thought I had a little bit more time. The first item I have for you is permission to advertise for seal bids for CP project or county project 18-113-03. We brought this before you because it is a little bit different than what we have in the 5-year plan. Of course, every year that we approve or you approve a 5-year plan. We were not planning to do County Road 113. This is down by Pine Center in the southeast portion of Crow Wing County. We are not planning to do anything in this project till next year. Normally, our projects are contained all within 1 year. This project includes culvert replacements and a resurfacing project. This year, we've been working really hard on some hydraulic analysis down there. There's some concerns with drainage down there. We've taken a hard look at those. That analysis is in, and now we know the size and the location of these culverts that need to be replaced, or in some cases, upsized. What we're seeking permission to do is to separate the culvert project away from the rest of the resurfacing project. And the reason we're doing that is because we want to seize an opportunity for two things. One, it's a very dry year, and it's a good time to put in culverts. When you're doing that type of work, to have the ground saturated and a lot of water running through the pipe while you're still trying to fix it can make it more challenging and end up in an inferior product. The other reason we want to do it is we've had some good luck or good experiences with placing the culverts a year early, letting them settle over the winter and then into the spring. A lot of settling happens with these culverts and they result in bumps or dips. And although it can still happen, you lessen the possibility of doing so. And so we're seeking permission to do a 2022 project this fall. The plans and specs are being done right now. The current estimate for just the culvert work is $250,000. That money was part of the project that you approved that we're going to do next year. So essentially, we're trying to do it 6 weeks early in terms of the fiscal year and financial year boundary. So it's not a big deal, and it really will result in a better product. So we're seeking permission for that.
This won't change the budget for this year?
It will have an impact on the budget this year because the money, we are planning to spend it next year. So we would have to spend we're spending part of it this year. It is money or fixed cost. It's just across that financial year boundary.
Okay. Commissioner Coyne?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I just want to say thanks to the county engineer because this was my suggestion to him. I've seen where if we do the culvert replacement and resurfacing the same year, the culvert will settle and then you can tell where every culvert is.
Yep.
And I mentioned to Tim, I said, couldn't we do the culvert replacement this year and let it settle over one winter? It'd be a much better product. And so I appreciate you. That was a couple months ago and voila, here you are. So appreciate it.
Yes, and it worked out. Our staff, has not rained. And the silver lining to that is you can get a lot of construction done. So we're finishing up a little early. We have the staff capacity to deliver this type of project. If it had been a rainy season, and we may not be in this position, Paul, but we are, and so we're seeking permission to do that. The $250,000, we will manage that through our fund balance, a healthy fund balance that we use to address things like this that kind of move the timelines around.
Mr. Chair, I would move the request for board action to advertise for sealed bids for project CP 18-113-03. Is that the one?
Yep.
Yeah.
Motion by Commissioner Coring.
Second.
To approve that. Seconded by Commissioner Franzine. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Not in favor, say nay. That motion passes. 7.2 is Carolyn Lane petition for improvements.
Thank you. I have an additional graphic that I'd like to share.
Okay.
Is that that one? Is that that?
I'm not quite ready for it yet.
Slightly different. It's a lot different.
There is a small change, and I'll get into that. The next item I have for you is the continuation of a board item that first appeared before you on July 27th of this year. And it is the petition for improvements to Carolyn Lane. This is a process, is utilizing a process that we have in the highway department policies and the county policies that allows roads within the first assessment district that are currently gravel for the neighborhoods to come forward and ask, for lack of a better term, to assess themselves for to have it paved. And so many times the county or the township does not initiate these. These are neighborhood initiated process. And so on the 27th, you had asked for more information. A gentleman came forward, I believe Mr. Smith is here, to have a community meeting to talk about this project with the neighbors. All of you attended that on the 10th of this month, and it went very well. A lot of good information was shared. And so we're back again to present the petition that was initially presented to you on the 27th of July. And at that meeting, as I mentioned, all of you attended. We heard a few more people agree to be on the petition. There were still 4 or 5 that were remaining. A few of them came to the meeting and indicated their support for it. Subsequently, after that meeting, we had gotten some correspondence from one of the properties, Mr. Young, Mr. and Mrs. Young in this property here had written me an email, and maybe shared it with you, that he no longer wants, or they no longer are in support. So the current petition, which includes 21 properties that have been determined to be benefiting from the paving, this blue portion, Carolyn Lane, 17 of 21 have agreed to it, and the 4 that are in red are opposed to it. Now, there has been some discussions about whether this this white portion should be included in the project. We had a meeting with Commissioner Brecken, and I had a meeting with Mr. Smith, Tony Smith, in our office, and it's not conclusive whether that road should be part of this or not. It's based on an interpretation of some comments. At the community meeting on the 10th, we agreed to split the issue in terms of deal with the white road by itself. You directed me to meet with Mr. Smith. And the other issue was to keep going with Carolyn Lane and the neighborhood petition to pave the portion that is clearly Carolyn Lane and clearly identified in a past board meeting or board action to accept the roadway. So the action today I'm asking is to set the public hearing. I think there's some more discussion about the things we just talked about, but we need to hear from you if you feel that there's enough support or enough information to actually set the public hearing. We'll continue our work to gather information. So at the public hearing, you might hear from the residents, you might hear from Mr. Smith, who's in the crowd today, about that. So that no decision today other than to set the public hearing to follow the process that we have for the paving of this road.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I can,
Rebecca.
I did receive an email this morning from Jennifer Littler. I believe she's one of the 4 residents.
Yes, if you go back to that map. If you go to the map, I can just show where she is in one of those red areas
Right.
between,
Her request
I
of,
believe it's this one.
okay, her request of me was to possibly postpone anything here until we can have more information, but I just wanted to bring that up that we had received that request.
Okay.
She's on Teams.
Oh, she's on Teams? Okay.
Ms. Littler, if you would like to speak to this, this would be your opportunity.
Thank you. If we could, I appreciate the time. The problem is we were not notified at the time everyone else was. As a matter of fact, this is relatively new to us at this time. And I personally have received so much varying information on this, and then had the opportunity to speak with several people from the county. And then I had an opportunity to speak with a couple of my neighbors. And what was originally explained to me has turned out not to be what this petition is. And my concern was, and I think all of the neighbors are supportive of paving, but the 4 neighbors who are not included in this petition would be paying for something that is not of benefit to them. And so I would respectfully request that I, and if my 4 neighbors, which would include Mr. Smith and Mr. Young, and the property kitty corner could be removed from the petition, or we could lead our own petition separately at another time. We appreciate everyone's hard work with this, and I know Mr. Smith has really gotten maps and information. He's just been phenomenal. I actually got more information from him than some of the people could provide from the county. But because this is literally, we just got a letter about this a week or 2 ago, whether it was mail delivery or what the circumstance was, we would like more time and have everybody be on the same page. And I understood that there was going to be another meeting on September 21st, at which point I would head up, because we live in the cities, and be able to attend that meeting in person.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay,
could I ask
thank
a
you.
question?
Commissioner Coring.
So a question to you. So you do not support the paving of Carolyn Road. You say it's not a benefit to you, but you actually have to travel on that road to get to your lot, correct?
Well, I beg your pardon, sir. When we first heard about this, we thought that it was only the road leading in. We didn't realize that Carolyn was going all the way to the right in the cul-de-sac. And I had actually spoken to a member of the county or the engineer, and said it would not include the 300 plus feet in front of our property. And because, sir, we are not there year round, and my father is 95 now, sir. He just turned. And the property is not used full time in the summer as it has been for most years prior. And so for us, we support what the other residents would like to do for the value of their property, but we either ask to be included on it, or most certainly for more time to figure out, what can be done, or we ask to be removed from the petition, because we feel like we were put into something that we didn't know really anything about until 2 weeks ago.
Could I just have
Sure,
one
go ahead.
follow-up? So just to ask you again, so you do not support the paving of Carolyn Lane?
If you're asking if I support the petition that I did receive, and that it's the portion that it's the drive-in off Ojibwe, and it goes to the right down to the cul-de-sac by Ruskins, would exclude the 4 properties to the left, then no, sir, I would not support that, because we are not included. It wouldn't increase our property value. And it's almost as if we're paying for other residents rather than getting a benefit long-term that they would be receiving and we would not.
Okay, I appreciate that. That's fine with me, then I will vote not in favor of this petition then. Thank you.
So to clarify for me, this is Commissioner Barrows. To clarify for me, you are in favor of the project from Ojibwe, the long straight stretch. Is that correct? But not in favor of the L shape that goes down to the cul-de-sac?
That is correct, sir. And if our neighbors, and I beg your pardon, sir, if I had known that there was going to be a meeting with all the neighbors, I feel like we could have all discussed that and I could hear their side and be able to express our side. But if only if only the L is covered and you're looking at a road with a T, I support the long road of Carolyn, but not paying for neighbors on the other side of the T when we are not of benefit to the left. I
Okay.
hope I'm explaining that correctly, sir. I'm looking at a map that was sent to me. It was sent to me, I believe Mr. Hall sent this to me, as well as provided me a copy of the petition, which we didn't have either. So where that white part is, sir, on the map that's up there now, that's where we are. And myself and 3 of my neighbors are totally excluded from that project. So if you took off the blue part to the left and only paved Carolyn Road coming in, yes, I believe that we would support that. But if you're going to go down to the cul-de-sac, then I would ask why the 4 of us were not included or could be of benefit.
All right, thank you very much. So Tim?
Thank you for your time.
Can I just clarify something? So the original, or the only petition that was circulated, and I mentioned that it was really a citizen, a neighborhood-led process, and there's a lead petitioner who we help make the maps, find the names, and then it's up to that person to go around and seek approval or signature on that, and it's part of your packet. The original petition included 21 properties. And so if you count up all the red and all the green, it's 21 properties.
Okay.
And so that's the petition that you have in front of you. I think what the argument might be is, do these truly benefit from Carolyn Lane, what's blue being paved?
Yes.
And should they be included?
In the assessment.
In the assessment. And that changes, maybe it's not obvious, but the most readily identifiable benefactors of paving the blue are the people in green that actually touch it.
Right.
And so the current estimate is $82,000 to pave the blue portion that you see there. And so it's the difference between being split up 21 ways or 17 ways. Currently, the estimates and the petition, and they have indicated, has been split 21 ways. So the people in green, if the people in the red are removed, will increase their cost or their assessment by $900. And so I think one of the arguments that those being opposed are, we don't benefit, therefore we shouldn't be part of the assessment. And so we've asked that you accept the petition that is before you, and if you feel differently that maybe that those people don't benefit and they should be excluded, then another petition would have to be circulated because the people in green, all signed it based on a cost divided by 21 and not 17.
But the people on, excuse me.
Go ahead,
Sir,
Mr. Coyne.
if I may, if a second petition is submitted, would the people in green have to pay an assessment on our side then?
No, just to be clear, Ms. Littler, this white portion will not be paved. It will be not part of the project. I know there's ongoing discussions about that, but where we're at right now, that will not be part of the project.
Yes, sir. And you had mentioned, though, that it would take a second citizen-led petition to do our part, our 4 residents. If that is done, sir, would the people that we have paid an assessment for have to come in on our 4 lots and pay an assessment for us then? I guess what I'm looking for is not only a quality in the pavement, but a quality in paying for it. And I don't want to sound like I'm opposed to the project. I guess what I'm looking for is fairness, and I support what my neighbors would like to do, but I would also like to be able to lend voice to them by saying, if I pay a $4,000 assessment to benefit your road and your property, if we do a second petition to include our 4 properties, would you be willing to be assessed on that as well? It seems like we were kind of shoved to the side on this, sir, and I don't believe that it was intentional. I just think it happened. And again, because I'm coming into this late, I just feel like if we could have more time or be removed from the petition in totality and present our own. If they don't want to include us in the beginning, but want us to pay for that part, may we be removed? And then we can petition on our own and pay for our own.
Mr. Bray.
I just want to reiterate, and I think we mentioned this at the community meeting that we had on the 10th, was that the current process that we have is to pave roads that are already accepted by the township. And that is represented in the blue portion right here. So Ms. Littler, you had asked the question whether if a second petition generated by the residents back in this area could be initiated and then ask the people represented in green to pay for your portion. And the answer is no. There's no current process to upgrade a private road to a township standard road to be taken over. What the residents in the area would have to do is bring it up to their own standards, not use the county to make an assessment or to share the cost. They must come together themselves, upgrade their private road to the standard, and then petition the county board for it to be taken over. In this particular case, there is no option for the county to step in and help finance the improvements to the white area.
To Ms. Littler's point, is there a way to, because I see what she's saying, is for those 4 properties to be assessed from Ojibwe to the corner, and then the other properties, is it 17 properties?
Green is 17.
Pardon me?
The green properties equal 17, and the red is 4.
And those properties would then be assessed their portion of that long stretch and the portion that goes over to the cul-de-sac.
Mm-hmm.
And those 4 properties would only be assessed for that initial long stretch, straight stretch there. Is that a possibility?
Well, I think, Mr. Chair, there's a lot of different ways to assign the assessments in this particular case. And if you're familiar with assessments, sometimes it's by the linear foot of frontage, and sometimes it's by the lot, and sometimes, there's a lot of different ways to do it. Our initial help with the lead petitioner was to include all those that we feel benefited. And the argument about people down in this area benefiting is that they do benefit by driving on this portion. And I want to just bring up an example and a common thing that we hear from those in these situations. Say there's a driveway, and I think there is a driveway right here. This person and this person only use this portion of the road. Very seldom do they go down to the cul-de-sac. But they'll be responsible for all of it. And so it's a similar argument that although it doesn't go right up to their front step, there is some benefit to these properties. And we use the benefiting properties divided by, or the cost divided by the number of properties. If there is another way that the neighborhood proposes to split up the cost, that's okay. The county, or acting as a township, doesn't mind how it's paid for, other than that we're following our policy and that we're not paying.
Right.
And so if they need to go back to the drawing board, the neighborhood, to come up with a different way to split the costs, maybe considering what these residents have to say in their argument that they're not benefiting as much and should pay something less, that's up to them, I think.
Commissioner Coring?
You know, just a question. Is somebody on the line?
So my name is Cameron Littler. Could I just, to me, it would make more sense to split up.
Excuse me for a
Carolyn.
second. I'm not sure I recognize the voice. Can you tell me who's speaking?
Yep, this is Cameron Littler. I'm Jennifer Littler's nephew.
Okay.
To me, it would make more sense to split up the cost of paving Carolyn Lane from Ojibwe to the corner.
To the T.
To the T there, among the 21 residences. And then if I'm looking at that map correctly, when you guys have it up, it looks like there are maybe 10 or 11 properties that would touch the L there that is going to be
The cul-de-sac.
the paved, yes.
And then plus R4.
So my thought would be split up Carolyn Lane from Ojibwe to the corner among everybody. And then that additional part there that is in blue right now, why wouldn't that cost be just split up between those 10 or 11 properties that will actually use that part?
All right, I think we understand that. Commissioner Coring?
Let me just clarify this. Okay, so it almost sounds like we're in negotiations.
Right.
And we're not in negotiations. We have a petition before us, on a specific petition that citizens have brought forward. That's what we have to address. Am I correct or incorrect?
Mr. Chair, that is correct.
Okay.
So we're here to set a public hearing, is really what we're accepting the petition and setting a public hearing.
Mr. Chair, think about it. You're not in charge of the petition. That's
No.
not yours. That's the citizens. And whatever they choose to petition you to do is what you must consider. And so you have a petition. The legal process is to schedule a public hearing to take comment from all of the residents. That's what we're here today to do. You can later determine who benefits. That's different than what's in the petition. You cannot change what's in the petition. You have it. It's 21 lots. You can later determine that we're going to divide the benefits among 17 lots instead of 21. That's okay. You can do that later. But it's not today, and it's going to be after a public hearing on the 21st when you send a notice to everybody and they all show up.
And so, Mr. Chair, what was the date? Did we have a date? I know our board packet was 1,000 pages.
September 21st.
Yes,
September 21st.
that's the date that we had proposed for you in the board packet to hold a public hearing to take comment on this request, on this petition, September 21st. That would coincide with a normal county board meeting. We typically would schedule that at about 9:05.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we set the public hearing on the Carolyn Lane petition for improvements for September 21st, 2021. Is there a time specific?
No. Commissioner Coring makes the motion to set the public hearing. Commissioner Franzine seconds that motion. Sorry,
Does that
we're
mean
just,
that the
ma'am,
petition was
Miss-
accepted
Ms.
today,
Littler?
or does it mean just to the 21st?
I'm just going to move forward here
I'm
with
sorry,
this.
sir, I didn't understand.
Turn her off, her. I'm sorry, who seconded that?
I did.
Commissioner Franzine?
Thank you.
So all those in favor of the September 21st public hearing signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those not in favor signify by saying nay. That motion passes. That concludes that. As the chair, I'm going to call a 7.5-minute recess for some relief. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm just waiting for YouTube to start streaming again.
Just so everyone in the room knows that this is Therese, and she is the power that generates our meetings, and we don't ever go against her.
Okay.
All right, we're back in session, and with that, Mr. Griffin from Land Services is here.
And maybe, Mr. Chair, we could explain why Mr. Free turned into Mr. Griffin?
Sure. Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Jake had a family emergency he needed to go home to, so I am going to do my best to pick up where he left off. So with that, in front of you, we handed out some findings of fact that you could use if you choose to help support your recommendation if you're leaning towards approval. And just as a point of clarification, my understanding you're at there's a motion for approval with a second, and before a final vote, I would ask that potentially be amended to ensure that the approved plat, since there was some changes to the original plat, that it is the board action that's on page 419 in your board packet, and that it also contains, if you do choose to approve, all the conditions that are on page 418 need to be in that motion, just as clear, to be clear on that.
Page 418?
Yep, that's where you would find the conditions for the preliminary plat that you would want to ensure that you have those in your motion.
So we do have a motion and a second, so I believe that would require an amendment to the motion. So would somebody offer up an amendment to require the conditions on page 418 of the packet?
Mr. Chair, that can be with the approval of the mover and the second.
Incorporated in there.
Okay.
If it's okay with him.
And again, is that what we're talking about?
No, that's just, I want to make sure we don't leave off those conditions once you guys get into through the findings of fact. If that's the way you go, that it's all in one motion when you approve it.
Mr. Chair, if the mover and the seconder modify their motion to include those 5 conditions, I think is the request.
Yep, I would make the motion to amend.
Were you the mover?
You approve the change.
Right.
The addition to the
Was the
motion.
mover
And I'm the seconder, okay with that too.
So both the motioner and the seconder have approved that change or that addition to the motion.
Then the
So-
motion on the floor would be to approve the preliminary plat with those 5 conditions and
Correct.
the findings that have been proposed by staff, unless you want to make any changes to the findings. So take a moment to look through those and see if there's anything in there that you think is not consistent with your decision.
They need to be read.
Could you scroll so that the audience can see that too? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I do have one question. I know in the original plat, it was a 14-foot road. Is it 20-foot? I don't see that, and maybe I've just gone over it so fast that I don't see it.
I'll let,
It was changed to 20 feet.
I do believe
Right.
so. Paul- Paul's
It's
not
in
here
this
no more.
last bullet point here.
Okay, there
Oh,
it is.
yep, there it
Yes,
is.
I did go over it so fast, I didn't see it. All right, thanks.
Ready for me to scroll out there?
Okay, I think everybody's had an opportunity to read the findings of fact. Those would be entered as the findings of fact for the motion that's on the table. With that, I would look for a vote. All those in favor of the motion to approve this development with the findings of fact signify by saying aye.
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 Those not in favor signify by saying nay.
Nay.
That motion passes. And so your development is on its way. I know that there's a lot of feelings on this matter, and I understand the concern. We have to go by what we feel is our county ordinance, and I think to the one individual's point, we make ordinances based on county-wide, not on individual townships, and I think Commissioner Coring, you made that point. Unfortunately, there are townships that have different views. I think in your comprehensive plan, those were noted. Comprehensive plans are simply a guiding tool. Even our own is a guiding tool for us, but our ordinances are what we must follow, and we feel that apparently this is the best approach at this time. So with that, we'll move on to the next item. County Sheriff is not here. Or is the sheriff on Teams?
Nope. I don't see him.
All right, County Attorney, Mr. Ryan.
Good afternoon, everyone. I don't have anything for you today, but I am able to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for the attorney? Surprisingly, there's none, Don, so thank you very much.
Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you.
You too, thanks.
County Administrator Hool.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, we had a senior management team meeting yesterday and trying to put final touches on 2022 budget. So if you guys have any information needs or questions or issues or concerns that you'd like, otherwise we'll talk more about that on Thursday, I believe, at the Budget Committee. We also have discussions about our rising case counts. It is getting concerning to us as we pass the 30 case threshold. That's the 14-day average of new cases per 10,000 population. And at some point, What action should we take? Primarily, our discussions at this point have been focused more inwardly on whether or not we should be going back to requiring our employees to wear masks and what vaccination status would maybe relieve you of that responsibility. And so we are having conversations down that direction. We're going to need to bring those conversations to you because, of course, if there is a request to do anything, it would need board approval. So at some point, you should expect in the not very distant future, we're going to begin conversations with you about that topic.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Tim, how many people in the county are vaccinated? Do you have any?
We passed the 60% threshold of those who are 16 and older, that eligible for the vaccine population. We passed the 60% threshold within about the last week or two. Aiken County remains slightly ahead of us at about 62%. Cass County is slightly behind us at about 59%. The other counties in the region are in the upper 40s or low 50s. We're doing well comparatively in the region. We're doing well comparatively for Greater Minnesota. I'll give you an idea of comparison. I was in the state of North Carolina a couple weeks ago, and the state was at 43% vaccinated. Minnesota's at over 70% vaccinated. So it is different. And so would I like it to be 100%? Yes, I would. But 60 is better than many places.
Any other questions? I think we are seeing the numbers rise, and I think that we have to be cognizant and do our due diligence in protecting our staff and that, so we'll have a discussion on Thursday.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, also enclosed in your packet, we had received a letter from CRMC who is looking to expand the care center in partnership with Presbyterian Home Services. That would add some additional nursing home capacity, skilled nursing service capacity in our community. I ran it by Community Services. They were fully supportive, and so I put it forward. I have a draft letter for the chair to sign and send on your behalf if you are so inclined.
All right, well, I have one quick question, Tim, on these letters of support. And I see up there it has all 5 of us listed, which is what my question was going to be on any of these letters of support, that we could have all 5 of us on there, even though the chair signs the letter. So I would appreciate that going forward from my perspective, because we all are supposedly endorsing it, unless one of us would choose not to.
That first sentence in the letter, I will only write in a letter for you if the board has approved it.
Okay.
And so it is the chair is writing on behalf of everybody. I have no issue. If you'd all like to sign, then we'll do that moving forward.
I just want each of us acknowledged on the letter at the bottom, and that's fine.
Mr. Chair, this is our standard commissioner letter, county board letterhead.
Okay. Well, I was looking at, we were going to be considering the one for the YMCA.
Yeah, I think I put it on the wrong one.
Oh, Tim did that one.
This is what happens.
I wasn't here.
When my right-hand person is not here, I screw up all the time.
Okay.
I can put it on the other one, though.
It will go on the right letterhead.
All right, so right now we're considering the CRMC Care Center addition or expansion, and so I would look for a motion to sign that letter, to approve the chair to sign that letter of
Motion to approve.
okay, thank you. Getting me off the hook. Motion by Commissioner Coring, seconded by Commissioner Hoag. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those not in favor, say nay. So that one passes.
Mr. Chair, yesterday I received a request by email from the local YMCA. They are applying for a grant for some additional daycare capacity in our community. They've acquired a building in Brainerd to help to do that expansion. I also saw in the newspaper they're expanding daycare capacity out at Camp Vanasek, which is a good thing in our community. We know that we have a daycare shortage. When we talk to folks at Bladek, it is one of our limiting factors to economic growth right now, is finding daycare capacity, especially for infants. So they are asking for a letter of support for their grant application. I did pass around a draft for your consideration if you're so inclined.
I'll make
Mr.
that
Court?
motion
Motion to
to approve.
to approve?
Second, but I just wanted to say something. I think this goes right along with the discussions that we were having about the CARES Act dollars, about trying to expand that we were in a position where there's just, the daycare is not available. So this is right in line with what the planning discussions that we were having. So this is actually a good thing.
Thank you very much. So we have a motion and a second to approve the letter of support for the YMCA. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those not in favor, same sign, or excuse me, say nay. Hearing none, that motion passes. Any additional business?
Happy to answer any questions about anything related to county government.
Any questions for the administrator? Under additional business, I'd like to note that 2 weeks ago, we missed on Friday that it was National Left-Handers Day, which I'm very proud of and part of. Only to miss it myself, so.
And I didn't check what today was. Sorry about that.
Well, I appreciate it. It's been a long day regardless, so. So with that, I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Commissioner Coring makes a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Commissioner Brecken makes the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And those not in favor say nay. And with that, we are adjourned.